Selling in the billions each year, Rainbow Mealworms is your one-stop shop for all your insect needs. Their quality feeders and A-plus customer service keep me coming back to support the health and growth of all of our animals. Visit them today at rainbowmealworms.net to place your order.
What is going on, everybody? As you can see, we have a special guest with us today. But my name is Frank. This is Geeky Gecko Creations Breeder Feature Friday. Say that 5 times fast. Breeder Feature Friday, Breeder Feature Friday. If you're tuning in for the first time, the goal of this Feature Friday is to feature some of the top or upcoming breeders and industry leaders in our hobby. So we have anything from Crested Gecko breeders, bearded dragon, leopard gecko, and even industry leaders that have to do with caging, heating, and the improvement and advancement of our hobby. So today, I'm very pleased and happy to welcome Robby of Robby's Reptiles to the show. So how you doing, Robby?
Doing great, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, very, very well, very well. I always like to give a little shout out to the people who show up early and stuff because I think that's super committed of them. So if you see any questions in the chat that I miss, Robby, feel free to hit it. I tend to talk a little bit and talk over people's questions sometimes, but we have a few early birds in the house. Gecko Punk, if you don't know this guy, check out his YouTube channel. He is a young and young coming star for the reptile hobby. You know, it's kind of weird because we're kind of older men, right? I'm 30 something. And how old are you again, Robby?
I literally 2 weeks ago turned 24.
24. So yeah, you're not as old in the old bracket as me, but it's weird now. My first reptile was when I was 8 years old, but it's weird seeing people at that age now getting into it now that I'm so much further along in life. But it is really rewarding to see how excited people are. And think of it, this guy Gecko Punk could be the next person what we're doing in 10 or 15 years or even more. You know, so it's interesting to picture how people are going to be in the future. But Gecko Punk in the house, Esteban Ribas, Geeky Gecko Creations, that's us. Norman and his grandson, great little duo that always tune in with us. DNS Geckos. Anonymous was excited for the stream, so thank you guys for showing up early. Brian Phillips. Reseals Reptiles? Sup, Robby? You might know this person because they're not saying hi to me. Yeah. Cool. Well, how you doing, Robby? How's everything going? Last we spoke was a month ago.
Yeah, things have been going well. A lot of new babies have been hatching and things like that. A couple of sales here and there, but the rest of the market, we're all pretty slow right now. How about you? How's everything been going?
Yeah, I was wondering if it was just me. Sales are a little bit slow. I like to tell people that ask that sales tend to come in waves. So you might get a bunch of sales one week, but then nothing for 2 to 3 weeks. And so what I'm trying to do is stabilize. Now, I know you're not going this route, but what I'm trying to do is stabilize that income by actually providing lower cost geckos and wholesale so that my wholesale and lower cost animals can always bring me $1,000 to $2,000 a month, and then everything else will be bonus on top of that. But yeah, it's been a little slow. I think what was it? The stimulus checks and all that have pretty much stopped now, and people have run those dry.
Yeah.
So let me touch. I have a list of a whole bunch of topics I'll touch on with you. Sweet. But yeah, so I'll definitely keep us going with that. But a month ago, when you were on the channel, we kind of just brought you on real quick and we kept you for an hour, but that was really fun to talk to you then. But that was kind of to highlight your Lilly White Crested Gecko giveaway. So how did that go? Who wound up winning it? And are they super happy with their prize?
So I ended up pulling a follower from YouTube, or a subscriber, a follower from my main Instagram. And then right after that whole thing that we, or was it right after? It was around the time that someone had tried to delete my Instagram account and tried to just wipe me off the face of the planet. They were going and trying to bomb a bunch of different gecko breeders. Anyone that used tubs, they were trying to go and
report them or hack into their
report and get Instagram to remove you. No questions asked, just gone off the face of the planet. But I didn't even all I did was I posted about how it's wrong that someone is doing this. So, and there's they're manipulating Instagram system. And then they ended up taking my account down, just guilty by association. But one email to Instagram, they were like, yeah, this person's not doing this properly. Anyway, I ended up picking a person from YouTube, a person from my main Instagram, and then a person from my backup Instagram, which now has like 1,000 followers, which I appreciate.
Nice.
And then I gave away one. The winner was LBS Menagerie or LBS Exotic, something like that.
Okay.
And then I felt really bad because I like texted people like, hey, you're in the top 3. And then I just rolled a D4 and I didn't count out the one. I ended up giving away all to each of them. I gave the first place was that Lily White that was posted. Second place was a really nice quad stripe. And then the third one said that it was okay. He didn't want it because he was in Canada and would have been complicated. But yeah, so I posted publicly that I was giving away one, but I was trying to give away 3 at the end of the day.
That's really cool. And that always brings good attention to your brand, and it's always worth it, you know. As I scale as well, I'd like to have a bunch of geckos on hand just to do giveaways, promote the hobby, promote obviously your own brand and your business. That's very helpful for. But it's really exciting getting into the hobby. So we didn't get to go too deep into this last time, but tell me a little bit about you. Why reptiles? Why not breed cows for a living or chickens? I know you do some farm stuff. Why are you seeking to do reptiles specifically?
Well, I've never really been a mammal person, as I'm sure a lot of people that are listening to this can relate. Like me personally, I really don't like dogs. I just think dogs and cats are like the biggest waste. We'll get into that later. But I've always loved reptiles. I was originally, you know, when I was growing up in California, I was quite obese and I was kind of like very held back. I could never speak in public or speak in front of people. I didn't know how to talk to people. I was a total weirdo. And so I turned to reptiles. My mother let me get a bearded dragon and I named him Jake. He was the greatest thing that ever happened to me. And I would carry him around the ranch everywhere when I was doing my farming and everything. And he would just chill on my shoulder. He was like my best friend. And like I was the kid that would always come home and I'd be like, look, I found a bunch of gopher snakes, and I'd have like 4 gopher snakes wrapped around my neck, and my mom would just absolutely freak out. I've always liked reptiles, just a thing. And then now that I am an adult and I got out of the army, I was like, hey, you know, with video gigs that I do, because I'm a videographer, work is very ebb and flow, much like the reptile industry. But I wanted to find something to fill my time in between the lulls of shooting videos. So I started doing this on the side, and I was like, first I was working with hypo redfoots and het hypo redfoots, and I was trying to grow them up. If you don't know, that's like a 12-year investment to even get a baby to be able to breed. So I was lucky enough to get like some juvies or 5-year-olds and things like that. But I was like, well,
those are redfoot tortoises, correct? Okay.
But that was taking a long time. And I was like, well, how can I try to like, you know, recoup funds, but also like have the excitement of creating things faster? Because right now this is a really long-term thing. So then I literally just looked up like gecko species that are fun or something or cool. And then I saw like Crested Geckos and I saw how many colors they came in. And I was like, oh no, I'm going to dive down this rabbit hole. And then I drove down that rabbit hole of discovering. And, you know, like when I first started watching things or learning, I saw like Tiki's geckos and I saw like all these pet tubers talking about them. And I was just like, wow, this looks like a really easy to care for species with plenty of color variety. And I've always been a guy that just loves bright colored animals. Anything rare. I've like my favorite childhood movie was Dinotopia. And I loved the fact that one of the main characters got like his sole assigned dinosaur was a albino pterodactyl. And I was like, that's so cool. Yeah.
An albino pterodactyl. Wow, they put all of that into a cartoon. That's interesting.
Well, no, it's not a cartoon. It's a live action movie that they made. It's a 5.5 hour movie.
Oh my gosh.
Anyway.
Sounds interesting.
That. So I saw this and I was like, well, hell, why don't I just start trying to breed these Crested Geckos? They seem easy to care for. So I got like 1, then I got 2 more. And then I was like, okay, what if I buy them wholesale? Because I was like, I'm sure that I could buy them wholesale and then keep them until they grow up. And then if I don't like them as an adult, I can sell the ones I don't like and recoup my money. So I bought like 20 geckos from AC Reptiles and I got all of them. But I loved all of them. And I was like, damn, okay. So, and then anyway, long story, that's pretty much how it all started.
I actually bought some wholesale from AC Reptiles as well, and they came in looking pretty nice. And I was like, man, I might want to grow these up. But now everyone's going to have their own different perspective on this. To me, growing up Crested Geckos is a little bit long because I work with leopard geckos, which I kid you not, a leopard gecko will be an adult in 6 months. Now that's a pro and a con. The pro is you're not stuck with a small animal for 2 years or a long period of time and waiting for it to breed. But the con is that it drops the market value and the breeding capabilities of everything by a ton because it's so quick to produce and so many people are doing it that the competition level is just enormous. Now, the competition level in Crested Geckos is enormous for the lower end stuff, but the higher stuff is because it's so new and there's so many new combinations still, and it's taking 2 to 3 years to raise up these new combinations. I think the Crested Gecko market will hold out really nicely for a long time. We got a super chat here. Let's put the super chat up from Brian Phillips. $5 super chat. Thank you so much for that. That's really awesome. Frank, got one of your geckos sent to Ohio this week, and she is doing great. Thank you so much for your support and communication at A+. Thanks so much for that shout out, Brian. I really appreciate it. That's one of the benefits of breeding reptiles, wouldn't you say, Robby, is like customer interaction, relationship building. It's really its own community, you know? So
yeah, it definitely is. I mean, like I love every now and then you get a customer that's like just so in love with the species, and I always feel kind of honored that they want to buy from me because there's thousands of other people that have them for sale. Like I had one really kind lady or young woman, I don't know. And she was just so like, oh, I've got this enclosure. I'm so happy to get it. And she was like in no rush to ship it because it's really hot here. I still do high temperature shipping. It just costs a lot more. And then, my live arrival, it gets kind of muddy trying to do that because I have some people that are like, I need it now, no exceptions. And I'm like, okay, that's going to blah, blah, blah. It's going to be this. But like you're risking, if this is what you need or what you want, you have to understand that risk. But anyway.
Now, speaking of that, I've always heard that Crested Gecko breeders now they might do this, but what they kind of say, at least to save face or maybe look the best they can, is that they don't want to ship above 90 or 95 degrees. So can you speak to that a little bit? Is that true?
Absolutely.
For the most part?
Yeah. Most of the time, if you don't know what you're doing and you ship in temperatures like, and you ship at like 85, you'll probably be okay. But like if you're just willy-nilly shipping at like 90 or 95, there's almost a 100% certainty that they will die in shipping.
Now, is that even if you use a cold pack or a cryo pack?
No, but that's why more so it's like if you're going to be doing it willy-nilly. If you know what you're doing.
If you're using no temperature control.
Yeah, if you're just trying to ship and be like, oh, it'll be okay, you're going to have problems.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm trying to prop up my laptop.
No, you're okay. And I'm kind of probing a little bit for me to understand the risks involved because I am getting into cresties and gargoyles more. For leopard geckos and ball pythons, I can ship year round. Even if I'm in Arizona, it could be 120 degrees, it'll be on the truck for maybe like an hour in a compartment that might be 150 degrees. Like I kid you not, those trucks in Arizona could be 150 degrees. But I use a cryo pack in every single one of my packages that go out, unless it's winter. So if it's spring or fall, I'm going to use a cryo pack, even if the temperatures are nice. If it's summer, what I've started doing is actually putting the cryo pack right next to the reptile with just a small layer of newspaper between it. But I was going to ask your experience with cryo packs, because to me, cryo packs, I've never had a dead on arrival yet. And of course, I'm not shipping Cresteds all the time. I'm shipping Leos. But every time my customers get their package, I ask them for a temperature reading and to send me a picture of what the cryo pack looks like, because that will let me know if the cryo pack is in cold mode or extra hot mode. And every single time, even though I've shipped out packages in 120 degree weather, the cryo pack is still in half cold mode, meaning that it didn't release all of its coolness, and I don't poke any holes in the box, so it's insulated, no holes in the box, ship it out like that. I felt like that's been good, but I always knew Crested Gecko breeders were a little more sensitive, and I'm just wondering if that was like even with cold packs or not,
Yeah. I've successfully shipped in 105 now, and that was with a huge box that was a literal like styrofoam cooler on the inside with 2 ice packs on either side, and then 2 water packs on either side, because water doesn't want to change temperature. So if you add that to the pack, it will help maintain that temperature roughly.
Okay.
And that was the only time I shipped like 1 or 2 geckos in that heat, and they got there perfectly fine. I have had 1 DOA total, and the situation was I shipped it with a frozen pack, but it got stuck in Nashville for 2 days. So it was 1 day of shipping, and then they left it there Tuesday and Wednesday, and then it got delivered Thursday. And
Yeah.
we tried to get FedEx to pay for it. We tried to open a case and everything like that, but no matter what you do, they won't cover anything. It's not their responsibility, even if they just straight up left it in the sun.
So that's why you say it's more expensive for you to ship in the heat, because you're going through all of those extra steps, and now the package is heavier, right? With all that
the
water in it
package
and
is
stuff.
much larger, twice the size, bigger.
Yeah.
I have to buy coolers and more ice packs and put it in there. And then even doing that, I do have to remove my live arrival guarantee. Just be if a client is saying it has to be now, I have to get it now. I have to be like, okay, but understand that like this might void the live arrival guarantee, but if it ever does arrive, not okay. And that's only happened once, and that was a year ago. So this year I've been shipping in hot weather with great success. And if that does happen, then I replace with something of equal or greater value. That's always my policy.
Nice. Now, just to wrap up on this topic, have you talked to other breeders, big breeders that have been in like a lot longer, like Altitude Exotics and some other people? Do they ship year round, even in the heat, or do they like stop for certain periods of time, or do they kind of do what you're talking about with the water and the coolers and stuff?
From my knowledge, most breeders will just cold turkey stop. They don't want to risk it, and they don't want to. They're not hurting for sales either. The really big breeders. Because a lot of the times I'll lose a sale. I did lose a sale a lot of time last year when it was summer, and they were like, I need it now. And I was like, they will die. Like I can't ship it to you. And they're like, well, then I'm not buying from you. I ship in this weather all the time. And then I was like, okay, well, let me try to remedy this problem. So I built out like this whole thing, and then someone had shipped me one time. So I modeled it off of that and then got all the materials for it. And you can safely ship. You'd rather a Crested Gecko be cold than hot. They can survive all the way down to like 35, 40 degrees. But as soon as it gets to 85, kaput, dead.
Definitely. Let's see what Anonymous has a question here. You have found that growing geckos out is less effective than buying RTB. You know what RTB is, right?
Ready to breed.
You're a pro. You know it. Why don't you tackle that question? What's your opinion? Growing out breeders or buying ready to breed at 10 times the cost, right?
I wouldn't necessarily say that they would be 10 times the cost. Probably 5. But
they are a big portion.
Yeah. So it depends on what you're trying to buy. If we're talking about getting extreme harlequins or lily whites, I would say you probably should just buy an adult, because it seems like lily whites, people that are selling high quality ones, they go for $1,250 or so on average as a baby, and as an adult, they're like $1,500 to $2,000. So if you're trying to talk about like being able to, because the question is less effective than buying. So you're trying to figure out what is the most effective. It depends on what you're trying to do, because I have baby cappuccinos and super cappuccinos, and it's not effective to have bought those babies, but nobody is willing to sell an adult ever.
Right.
So,
and that's a good point. The Harlequins are extremely common, so you can find a lot of adults for reasonable prices, whereas cappuccinos, you're not going to find any cappuccinos for reasonable prices. Now, I faced that same problem getting into ball pythons. So leopard geckos is kind of like it's my passion, but it's also like my bread and butter. It's my staple income, so to speak. The ball pythons was something that I bought into where it was a future investment. Like, I know I'm not going to make any of this money back for like 5 years, but when I do make it back, it should be made back at very high end dollar animals. So I was faced with the choice: do I want to go around and try to buy a bunch of adult breeders, or do I want to buy a bunch of babies and grow them up and make my own babies? Or I mean, if you buy adults, you can make your own babies. But if you buy babies, you will oftentimes get more genetics in them. Instead of trying to make those genetics, you're buying those genetics. And about 3 years, I'm maybe 2 years, 2.5 years into it now. And if I did have to give somebody advice, I would say the risk that you have, and this is not as risky for crested geckos, I'd say, but for ball pythons are extremely finicky and picky, and their breeding season is way more finicky than like crested geckos. So when you buy an adult ball python, if you miss its season, or if it gets introduced to a new climate, a new environment, a new house, a new routine, you might throw it off for a year and a half, 2 years. And now you're not making babies, which was the point of buying it in the first place. So 2 years later comes along and you have not made any progress when you could have bought babies with excellent genetics already produced and just grow them up. And 2 years from now, you have a whole bunch of breeders. So that's kind of my one input on that. But
there's one question that I see that I want to clarify, because someone is saying that they would never ship an animal if there was danger involved. And that's why I was saying there's a high risk shipping thing that I have, or like there's extreme weather shipping is what it's called. And so I've gone through all the steps in order to make it, let's say the shipping an animal, there's a 5% risk. Now there's only a 7.5% risk instead of a 50% risk. So I'm taking all the steps necessary so that it's limited. I just have to clarify for terms of service, because you wouldn't believe how many times you're going to have someone in your reptile breeding career try to just push you around and say, oh, do this. But it's like, it's in my terms of service. And then they'll be like, I'm going to get my lawyer involved, or I'm going to do this. And it's like, what are you doing? Like, read things first.
It can definitely be a tricky hobby to navigate sometimes, with all the emotions flying around, the perspectives people have. To kind of touch on the topic you were talking about, breeding reptiles and shipping reptiles, the whole process of providing reptiles for people is a risk assessment job. That's part of your job, is to assess the risk and be okay with it. It can sound a little bit cold-hearted sometimes, but every single time anybody, whether they've got 50 years experience, every time they ship an animal out overnight, even if the weather's perfect, there's a risk involved with that animal going out. A FedEx driver could run it over. A FedEx driver could throw it on someone's doorstep. A plane could crash. Something could go wrong in the plane's cabin, and the temperature could go out of whack, or it could get stuck in a hub overnight in the cold or in the hot. We try to mitigate that risk by using cold packs, hot packs, looking at the weather. There's a bunch of things that we do, but ultimately the risk can never be zero. I'm wondering if you saw this breeder last year. So oftentimes when you go to a show, there are breeders from other states at that show, sometimes very far away across the country. What they'll do is they will pack up $30,000 worth of animals and ship it to the show, wherever they're going to vend the show. Well, this guy, he's an experienced breeder. Obviously, he had $20,000 worth of animals. I forget the exact number. It was very high. It was crested geckos. He shipped them out of state to a show that he would be attending, and that package got held up, and they couldn't get it out of Memphis, Tennessee, or wherever the hub was. His entire $20,000 package passed away, or not the entire, but like a big portion of it. And so that just shows you that even experienced breeders at some point, you can't calculate, or you cannot always beat the odds of the risks that we take in the hobby.
And that's one of the reasons why I try not to do shows. I might be testing.
I saw your video on that.
I might be trying to do one soon. And also someone said, is that a sock on Robby's microphone? Yes, it is. I couldn't find my pop filter.
I'm surprised they picked that up. I can't even tell.
There's a lot of risk, especially when it comes to going to a show. I mean, like I was at the booth with Flawless Crested Geckos at the Schaumburg show, and just seeing the sheer amount of geckos that they brought, and they drove 18 hours. I was just like, oh my gosh, I would never do this. Like, that is like so much. I would only do Texas.
That is a lot.
And past that, even Texas, it could be an 8-hour drive for me because it's Texas.
So I saw your video on like not really wanting to do shows, but not completely being like never. So are you saying you're kind of changing your mind a little bit, or like getting more desiring towards vending a show, or just attending one? Or
well, as you're aware, the internet really likes when you take an extreme opinion. So if I made a video about I'm 50-50 on shows. I see why they're cool, but also there's these possible risks. So blah, blah, blah. People don't want to watch that. They want to see you say, I'm never going to go to a show and here's why. And then they're like, why are you never going to go to a show? I love shows. And then it boosts comments and everything like that.
Gotcha.
I still have all those beliefs. I'm just more so trying to seem, I'm trying to make a video for entertainment, but also educational, showing that side. And then, so I already have a video that's being planned, and it's going to be like, I was wrong. And it's going to be me talking about all the good parts about a show. And so it's kind of like a whole thing.
You're too smart for this hobby, Robby. Too much planning. So touching on that real quick, in that video, you mentioned some truths and talking about risk. Vending a show is a risk because absolutely, hands down, no doubt about it, there are breeders at that show that have mites, parasites, sick animals, and people are coming to their table, touching their stuff, handling their stuff, coming to your table. And I'm the type of person that's like, I'm letting people handle pretty much almost all my stuff or a lot of my stuff. I kind of dialed that back a little bit this last show. I wouldn't let people touch my highest end stuff. But the show before that, I was like, here, hold this $5,000 animal, which for leopard geckos, a $5,000 animal is like a $50,000 animal for crested geckos. Like that's the top end for leopard geckos, right? Yeah. It doesn't get higher than that for leopard geckos. And so this is like really, really rare stuff that these people are so excited about. And I love that. I love it. But the next show, I had to tell myself, you know what? The risk of somebody having parasites or cryptosporidium or something on their hand that could pass a respiratory infection to one of these high-end animals, I have to mitigate that risk for this time until I have this is going to sound so bad, but until I have so many animals that the risk is acceptable to me. For example, if I have 100 Black Knight $5,000 animals, if I lose one by letting a kid hold it because that kid had a parasite on his hand and then that gecko winds up dying, then okay, like although I didn't want to lose that animal's life, the joy that I have in letting people hold animals and stuff is worth the risk for me. Now the risk doesn't mean it's always going to pan out, but
I think there's so many other safety measures you could take though to not even have to be like, it's okay if I lose this one. You can, and I'm sure that you meant this, but you didn't say it. And I know how people are. You obviously would go through all the steps to make sure that doesn't happen. Like, hey, before you touch this, hand sanitizer, let it dry. Don't let them lick it. Things like that.
Yeah.
Things like, and just observing. And then when you get them back, separate them from the colony. When you get back home, keep an eye on it. Maybe already be friends with the vet and have stock of certain things that are pretty common. Like I always have Panicure on hand. I have Zymox on hand for when there's any sort of like tail drop or if there's shedding issues. I try to keep things preventative because I know that you're not necessarily trying to say like, okay, once I have a bunch of these, then I'm okay if one dies. You're saying like, I know what you're saying is like, you want to be able to let someone hold this beautiful animal that might be wanting to buy it. But there's always the scare. But you don't want to be that person that's like, no, you can't hold it unless you buy it.
I know.
Sorry.
Well, I mean, like I have so much joy in letting people hold the animals.
Yeah.
And I do take those precautions that you're talking about. We always have hand sanitizer at our station. But let me tell you this. Let me just be completely open, honest with you. This is my biggest concern ever. Cryptosporidium is such a devastating parasite for reptiles that's uncurable and will absolutely kill any reptile that ingests it. And it happens to be in leopard geckos. Like it happens to be in leopard geckos that have been in the hobby for many, many generations. We haven't completely got rid of it. So like in my collection personally, any gecko over the years that I thought even had an inkling died from a potential parasite issue, I threw away everything belonging to that gecko because shameless plug, tomorrow we're dropping a brand new video on the 4 most popular parasites in reptiles and what they are. But crypto is my biggest fear for spreading that to all my reptiles because I don't even think hand sanitizer would kill crypto because alcohol doesn't do it. Temperature, unless it's above 158 degrees Fahrenheit for 20 minutes doesn't do it. And so like crypto is extremely, extremely resilient, and it's in the hobby. It's in leopard geckos. It's in green tree pythons. So those are the two species that are known to carry it. Now, I'm big into leopard geckos, and so are a bunch of other people at the show that are touching leopard geckos. If they then touch my ball pythons and the ball python just happens to lick up some of those crypto eggs, then now the ball python's got crypto. So even though it's more rare for ball pythons to have it, the geckos can definitely have it. But what isn't rare for ball pythons is respiratory infection. So for some reason, leopard geckos are more known to have crypto, which kills them. And ball pythons are more known to get respiratory infections, which kill them and every snake around them. So those are my two biggest fears for the show. And so to go back to your point, yes, I do take those other precautions that you're talking about. But at the end of the day, I know people at that show have snakes there that are bubbling with respiratory infection at the show. And if a customer of theirs touches that snake and then comes over to my table and touches anything, whatever they just touched is at risk of contamination as well. And so
Also, red foot tortoises, super susceptible to respiratory infections. They're very fragile, especially when you're working with visuals of a recessive gene with that species. Like visual hypos or visual albinos are incredibly weak compared to their normal counterparts. I was dealing with respiratory infections left and right, even though I gave them a 2,000 square foot enclosure outside with all the proper plants and all the proper humidity. I had sprinklers strewn throughout the trees on a timer, and it was like, I had that down to a science. They're allergic to something in the pollen that gave them respiratory infections, and then it slowly wiped out the entire colony of hypos that I had.
Wow.
And
is hypo super rare for redfoot? It sounds interesting.
It is. Now it's more common. When I was first getting into it, it was like 4,000, 5,000 for a hatchling.
Wow. That's a lot for a tortoise.
I had 3 visuals that were about 5 years old, and then I had 4 hets that were about 2 years old. And slowly, after $5,000 of vet bills, I watched them all slowly fall victim to respiratory infections or allergies to the pollen in the air. Luckily, 1 or 2 that were super healthy and hardy, I gave to a good friend in Florida, and they're doing fine. And there's no information online. I need to make a video about it. The redfoot tortoise is just literally, unless you are keeping them inside in a greenhouse, in a sterile environment, essentially, they cannot thrive anywhere other than Florida. And that is not public information anywhere. So I'd rather people learn from my like $20,000 loss than from their own $20,000 loss.
Yeah, definitely. And now that I think about it, that's one cool thing about the crested geckos is that they don't, for the most part, you're dealing with treatable diseases with crested geckos. For example, pinworms, hookworms, even coccidia, which we're going to talk about all of this in my video tomorrow. All of those are actually treatable. So if you get a fecal exam from a vet, or you do your own fecal exam, which you can do with a microscope at home, and you realize that you have coccidia, or you realize that you have pinworms, like you were saying, you can buy your own or get from the vet general dewormer or dewormer that's meant for coccidia specifically, and you can actually treat your animal and it would be cured. So that's really, really awesome that you don't have that extra concern, you know?
And I'm not a vet first, but Panicure is known that you can overdose it up to like 1,000 or even 10,000 times.
And it won't be an issue.
Great is that it is such a safe treatment, but that's also the problem is that it's creating Panicure resistant worms. I'm still here. My camera died. I'm just going to.
I was just like, what happened? Robby's talking from the grave. Okay, yeah.
And so that's the problem these days is that, you know, farmers too, I mean, are accidentally creating these super worms.
Yeah, that's a good topic to bring up because a lot of people are like, where did my animal get coccidia from? And when I was doing my research and making the video, that's a problem that they've struggled in water systems and animal farms and stuff like that for a long time. So like to touch on your point, yeah, the animals that we eat are generally treated for all of that stuff, right? Like all the worms and stuff like that. Oh shoot, I forgot what I was gonna say. I lost sight of you. Forgot what I was gonna say. Um, let me see.
I'm still here. I'm just trying to figure out which way to put the camera in. There we go.
What's going on, Henry Hicks? Whoever ID'd that is a sock on top of your mic, kudos to you.
Yeah.
Because looking at that, like I cannot even tell that's a sock. I only knew because I was talking to you before the stream.
I'm gonna grab my laptop charger really quick if you want
Okay.
to questions.
Yeah, you got it. Let me go hit up a couple questions here. So Anonymous said, I thought Black Knights were $2,000, and you are correct. They're typically $2,000 if they're not the best quality, but I brought the best of the best quality and adults to that show, and this was last year when the prices of Black Knights were higher. And so the price of that Black Knight would have been the value of that Black Knight that I was letting people just hold. Like I let hundreds of people hold it across the show. The value of that one would have been easily 5,000. But another thing too that I think will increase leopard gecko value is more community and more content, because with that the demand will go up. And so even though the supply is very high, if the demand is very high, then sellers can get more money for their animals. And this is kind of what we see in the Crested Gecko market is demand or supply is very high. There is 1,000 Crested Gecko breeders, but demand is also very high. And I said this in one of my other live streams on Monday when I was talking. I was like, you know what? Robby's doing really good, and he's a really great example of how quickly the Crested Gecko market's growing. Now, I'm not saying everybody could do this, but you are relatively new to making YouTube content, right? When was your first video you dropped?
I think it was like 8 months ago, 6 months ago.
Dang, 8 months, and you have over 2,000 subscribers. You know how long it took me to get 2,000 subscribers? Like a year and a half.
Do you know how long it took my first channel to get over 1,000?
How long?
Like 2.5 years or something like that.
Was it Crested Gecko related though?
No, it was Army related.
It was Army related. So there's a lot of competition there too, because there are a ton of vets that are making Army content and stuff, right?
Surprisingly, there's almost none. I mean, there's a lot, but like none of them can speak coherently on camera, and there's like a cut every word.
Yeah.
So if you
maybe I'm thinking of like the prank ones. I feel like there's a lot of Army prank videos out there. But going back to the Crested Geckos, so for whatever reason that didn't pan out for you so quickly, but do you still have that channel? Is it still going?
I do, and I finally got my freaking money from it because it was like, okay, we're gonna verify your address, so we're gonna ship you something, and it will get there in like 4 months. And then by that time, I had moved, and then I went back and I couldn't get it. But anyway, I just finally got all that YouTube money today, so that was like $2,000 just sitting in that YouTube that I never
from
had
that channel.
Yeah, but that's been there for like 8 years, 6 years or something like that. So it's not like I made a lot.
Wow, that's still, yeah. Well, that's a nice chunk of change coming in after that period of time. But I was complimenting. So let's just leave other criticism out of the equation. What you've done is you literally only have like 20 Crested Gecko videos, right? It's not very many.
Yeah, total, I think I only have about 20 videos. And
20 videos.
Somehow each one averages like 3,000, 2,000 views, way above my subscriber count.
Yeah, you do absolutely fantastic. And I think there's a couple reasons. Number one, you have a professional setup. You have like a cool vibe. You have nice animals. You have a good Instagram following. There's a bunch of stuff that you do have going for you. But another thing that I think you really have going for you is the Crested Gecko market in general, the demand, the amount of content that people are desiring to watch about Crested Geckos is going up. So just for relation, leopard geckos has been going down for 10 years. And I got a bunch of the bigger breeders in the hobby that are like, it's not going down, blah, blah, blah. But I have my reasons. But anyway, for me to hit 2,000 subscribers, it probably took me 200 videos. For you to hit 2,000 subscribers, it took you 20 videos. And so that's really indicative of the desire of the market and which one is growing more quickly. And I'm not afraid to say that, but my goal by producing more leopard gecko content is to attract more people to the leopard geckos and bring more awareness and more demand. And then I think we could start to see more appropriate priced animals, because breeding leopard geckos is a lot of work, just like breeding crested geckos is a lot of work. But the difference is, it just stinks that we have to sell our leopard geckos for so cheap, like really, really cheap for like nice quality animals that took you time to develop and look really nice. It's just the market's not there. And what can you do? You know, you can't sit on an animal for 6 months. So,
well, so here's the problem and also White Tank made a good point. High demand for good crested geckos. There's a low supply for them. So the problem with crested geckos is that anybody and their mother or brother could breed them and keep them, because they're very hardy, actually, from my experience. Rarely have I've never ever seen or had a sick gecko. I've never seen one. They simply are either good and then die. That's like the only thing that I've seen. It's never been like they're doing fantastic. Oh no, they got a respiratory infection, or oh no, they have this. I've never seen that before. And I've got I think 250 right now, something like that. But the problem with crested geckos and the market, the reason why, because the market wasn't always like this, how you're saying like, oh yeah, you guys can sell it for so much and blah, 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 which is true right now. But the problem is that for the past like year and a half, people have been discovering things. And what happens when you discover things? You want to breed them to everything. So people were posting their females, and let's say it was just a red patternless for this example. People were posting red patternless for like $250 as a ready to breed female, like 35, 40 grams, ready to go, decent head structure, $250. That's when I first got in. That was 2.5, 3 years ago. Now, and with all the discoveries of cappuccino, or with the hype of discovering other things and wanting to work on things, someone was like, okay, well, I'll just post her for 400. Oh, she sold within an hour as well. Okay. And then someone else saw that, and then they said, okay, I'll post it for 700. And then it sold within an hour. They were like, okay. And now I have seen, and I'm not talking about the crazy one, I have seen red patternless females that are barely ready to breed going for $2,000, or ones with portholes, which when I got in was like the bottom of the barrel morph, $1,500, $2,500 for a breeder. And I think it's just people see that, you know, the really big breeders like Altitude Exotics, Fringe Morphs, and take your pick, can list babies for such an expensive price, and people buy them. So people that don't even have half the same quality were like, but they don't know better. We're like, why don't I post it for that much? So now whenever you go onto Morph Market, I counted it the other day. I had to go 45 pages deep before I got below $500. 45 pages from highest to lowest.
For red patternless.
Until I got to, not for red patternless, for anything. 45 pages.
For adults or sub-adults, you're saying?
For all of them.
Babies?
Before I got below $500 in value. Because people are just like, oh yeah, I have a baby, and I saw Altitude, or I saw Fringe Morphs post a $2,000 baby. I'm going to post this one for $1,500.
It looks like theirs, right? Like, you know.
And so that's the problem, because like the other thing, when I first started, I would charge slightly more than other people. One, because of my photo capabilities, so I could properly display the animal in the highest quality or highest resolution anyone at the time, really. And so I was able to push ahead from that. So if I posted a gecko that maybe, let's say, someone would normally sell for 300, I could get away with selling for 400 because of my customer service, my photo quality, and my information, which is something that like you see Apple doing as opposed to Android, you know, and it's about branding.
Do you have an Android?
I do. I have the flip phone.
Oh yeah. I'm totally into Android too. Not to diss on Apple, but
I hate
dude,
Apple.
Android's got way more for way less.
Yeah.
It's the exact same thing or better.
And it's not even for less either. This was $1,000 phone. I just wanted it because it flips. Like, that's cool to me.
But they do a lot of deals on Android. You could get like half off and stuff.
Yeah,
Apple's very rare to give you anything off.
But anyway, so the whole market right now, it's like the real estate market. The real estate market has been like, oh, we're going to sell for $1 million over asking price because this super rich Californian just sold their house. And that's what's happening is people are selling off stocks because the stock market has been tanking. And then I've actually seen people do this. They sell their stocks and then they go over and they start buying Crested Geckos. And people are selling for such a high, the bubble is about to pop. And then everyone's going to be losing out on money. That's why there's already cappuccinos that are being sold in America for $25 $3,500 because they sold for the normal market price of $6,000, but then they posted for $5,500, and then a week later $4,500, and then a week later $3,500, and it's like, why are you lowering? It's just no one has money. We're all poor right now. We're in a recession, or at least we're starting the worst recession that's going to happen.
That's true.
And just everything with, I don't care what your political beliefs are, our government is, our economy is not doing well right now. And we have the real estate market that just burst, and we have all these other stocks and everything that are tanking. No one has money right now. And so people are panicking and either trying to sell their geckos for way too high or bottom of the barrel way too low. And if you're in the middle, you're SOL, because you're not going to cash in on anything.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing that you have to go through that many pages to find that. But, and let that kind of be a good learning point for anybody who wants to be a successful breeder. And I don't mean this in a bad way, because I did the same thing too. But when I was getting in, I wanted to study the market and see what people were getting for what animals. Mm-hmm. But just because Joe Blow or even a big name like Altitude Exotics, just because somebody sold a gecko or an animal at a certain price does not mean A, you could sell it for that price. B, the market will be desiring that gecko by the time you're producing those babies. Or C, I forget what my C was, but yeah, it's not always easy, right?
Yeah.
It takes a lot of work, a lot of marketing.
Yeah, it does. Someone commented they just got 2 caps from Korea for $3,500 each. That's a great price. It's really good. Wow. For me, my whole journey to getting cappuccinos was a nightmare because I cannot have spotted patterns. I can't. Right. And I don't want to make supers that have spots because I'm not trying to do anything Dalmatian. So it took me about 6 months of finding, and then I have 4 total. My super just got dots on his tail. But luckily, the Korean said, we'll replace it. I'm sorry. I thought it was going to be spotless. So that.
But how can you guarantee that? Because Dalmatian comes in over time, right? Oh, gotcha.
By lineage, yeah, it's pretty much. And then
Dalmatian will never randomly pop up. Like if the parents are not Dalmatian, for sure, none of the babies will ever develop a spot. You're saying for the most part, that's pretty reliable. Like it's not 100%, but it's pretty reliable.
It's usually pretty reliable, but I even have pairings still going on and they pop out Dalmatians and not a single Dalmatian. They have their tail. I've inspected them for at least an hour each, literally cumulative time. I inspect each adult breeder for a total of like an hour to see if there's any Dalmatian spots.
Glenn said you're secretly a Dalmatian lover.
Absolutely not. I mean, you know what's funny is I had some Dalmatians because I was like, hey, people want Dalmatians. I'll make some. I want to see what it's like breeding them. I ended up doing 2 pairings, and I made some of the most impressive Dalmatians that I've ever seen. And I literally just did it like, yeah, we'll put them together, Dalmatian to Dalmatian. I'm sure that's how it's done. And what do you know? I popped out a baby that had like 100 spots.
I was going to ask you on that. Do you think Dalmatian is line bred, meaning like the more spots on the parents, the more spots on the babies? Or you think it's actually like recessive or dominant, like something like that? Or incomplete dominant where it has a super?
It does have a super, and that just means that there's a lot more of it. Sort of like Extreme Harlequin. The more you pair Extreme Harlequin together, the more it will superfy, if you will. I'm sure I'm wrong. It'll multiply. From my understanding, from how we are doing this, even if it is a trait, the Harlequin and everything, it is doing things. But Dalmatian, I think that there's multiple kinds. So like in ball pythons, there's recessive exanthic, but there's also a codominant exanthic. I think that there's the same thing in Dalmatian because I swear I pair a pattern, a spotless to a spotless, and what do you know? One of the babies will have spots out, which would maybe to the 25% possibility that there would be 2 recessive, 25% of the offspring have a visual representation that would show up in some pairings that I do, and I'm like, where did this Dalmatian come from? There's not a single one on them. So that's I have a theory that there's multiple different kinds. There's a codominant, and I think there's also a recessive. But to my understanding, Dalmatian is codominant. And then so the reason I don't like Dalmatian spots it's not that I don't like Dalmatians. I think super Dals are awesome and a very cool project. But I think that when you mix them over to something patterned, you're kind of ruining the breeding value of that animal. So breeders that are really serious, like I would never ever breed a gecko that had any Dalmatian spots to a cappuccino or to a lily white. because that would just ruin
Dude.
all of its offspring for the remainder of its bloodline.
That line, yeah.
Because
now you might start a Dalmatian project with that later, like a Dalmatian Lilly.
But I will take a hard stance. You are wrong if you think that it's a good idea to do patterned Dalmatians, and you are wrong if you think it's going to be a good idea to make Lily white Dalmatians. Because if you're trying to make the highest quality gecko, the highest end quality gecko with the most desirable traits, mixing and making a hodgepodge is not the goal. You want to accentuate whatever is their strength. And whenever you start adding Dalmatians, it's just like, well, now I know all the babies that it has are going to have Dalmatian spots, and it's never going to get out of the bloodline. It's never going to get out of that gene. It's always going to be there. So that's the reason that it's like, I had a really nice creamsicle. She had one single dot on her toe. Got rid of her as soon as I found it. Can't do it because then all of their babies are going to somehow develop it. Or even if they don't, there's the risk. And then I'm going to have the small amount of anxiety anytime I sell a gecko, because I offer a 100% spotless guarantee. If I sell a gecko that I say this does not have Dalmatian spots, I will straight up, I'll refund you, or I will give you a free gecko if that ends up getting Dalmatian spots. What else is saying? Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, so to you, that's a big risk, the whole Dalmatian thing.
Yeah.
But there are people that like Dalmatian. And to be completely honest, I'd love to see a super dark black ink spotted Lilly Dalmatian if the ink spots cover the Lilly pattern. But what if the Lilly pattern goes over the ink spots, then now it's covering, it's fighting against it.
Dalmatian spots are incredibly visually dominant. No matter what you pair it to, it will stand out no matter what. Also, with super cappuccinos, we often are seeing these with white spots. That's not a Dalmatian spot. The definition of Dalmatian is a black spot. That's vitiligo or vitiligo. So it's causing translucency, not Dalmatian spots that are white or snowflaking. So much like we've seen in patient 0.
This just came to mind, but your buddy over there, Altitude Exotics, he's trying to make axanthic Dalmatians. He's really into Dalmatians.
Yeah, and I think that's cool if it's a patternless axanthic with no markings, no pinstriping, and it's super Dalmatian. I think that's awesome. But that's just
if you have a lot of geckos to be able to have a project specifically dedicated for that, and other projects specifically dedicated for no spots whatsoever. But let me throw some food for thought out there. We don't really have a pure black Crested Gecko yet. However, with the axanthic, like pure black though? Okay, then never mind. I was going to say with Dalmatian spots and cappuccino or axanthic heavily covered, it would almost like start creating a blacker and blacker animal. That's basically how they made the Black Knight in leopard.
Absolutely.
Geckos.
I mean, it definitely, you can accentuate the visual representation, as many times as you're willing to live and breed these animals. With, responsible outcrossing along the way, that's something you'd have to create a line for. And someone was saying, oh no, let's not get into line breeding. And then Anonymous says, I know Fireside, Oklana are making high coverage pin dowels. Yeah. And I think that's a terrible decision. That's not going to be
pinstripe down.
In a way, I wonder if they're just kind of doing it in order to just create them. But I don't think that it needs to be created. Which a lot of people share my opinion, and a lot of people disagree with me. That's fine.
Sure.
I'm simply saying my preferences when it comes to if I'm going to be spending $3,000 on a gecko, it better be exactly how I want it. You know what I mean? Right. And there's other people that share the same taste as me. So
the Koreans understand that. That's why they're willing to honor their. They're much, I don't want to say they're much more business honoring, but they are in a way. They're very business minded around making sure you get high quality and what you want.
I mean,
they want future purchases. So
it is a different culture, and I think here everyone gets their emotions much more involved in it. And and the really sad thing is, as soon as you start becoming more of a successful company. Oh, you're branded. You're just doing it for the money. You're terrible. You're a bad person. You're doing this. You're doing that. And it's it's okay to try to think of it business-wise, but it's because maybe I don't every 30 seconds in every video talk about how cute and adorable I think they are, and I love them so much because they're my passion. Then people immediately think that, oh, you're just doing this and this. And this battery died too.
Oh, no.
But the hold on, let me get this done. Which way is this in? That way. The situation, or the way that it is though, is like I saw that there was a huge hole in the market for business related or business centric videos around crested geckos, because everyone and their mother can make YouTube videos about, I love this thing's adorable, I love it, I'm gonna feed it this today, and then like just hold the camera in front of their face with the audio peaking. But I was like, hey, I'm a cinematographer, I know how to speak coherently for a couple of minutes, and you know, I know what I'm doing. I would love to make videos about this, because there's not a single person. I mean, I think there's only 3 total YouTube reptile people that actually uploaded into 4K.
Dude, I tried. My editing system takes forever to do that. So I was like, forget this. I'm not doing 4K no more.
And let alone, you know, people that do make the gecko videos are very scatterbrained. It's not very direct. So anyway, the moral of the story is that's the niche that I needed to fill, because everyone can make, you know, their pet tuber videos, stuff like that. But no one was making videos about the business side of it or giving actual tips. Everyone would just give such general information. And I was like, and I think it's very old fashioned. A lot of people don't give proper advice or actual tips. And then like I've spoken to people that think that like that too. And they're like, why would you give your competition this? And I'm like, well, all ships rise with the tide. So like the more knowledge that the hobby has, that's why like anytime I think of anything that could even improve my efficiency by like 2%, I upload and make a video about it. And then I'm working on another video where I'm correcting something that I did before. I've said, I found a new way to do it. It's more efficient. Here's how I did it, blah, blah, blah. Because if all of us are able to take care of an extra 5 geckos or make an extra couple $100 to be able to buy better geckos and then work on better projects, eventually, you know, that will snowball and it will set the whole hobby forward, let's say another year from just my efforts. It will put us like a year in the future, you know, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, you're helping grow the hobby. There's no shortage of reptile loving people in this country. And when I first decided that I wanted to do this as a business, I was like, you know what? Reptiles is actually a really great business, because every single second there is an 8-year-old, there's a 7-year-old kid turning 8 that wants a reptile for his birthday. Every second. And so there is no shortage of reptile loving people in the United States. There's just a shortage of people who are dedicated to promoting content creation and all of that. So like you were saying, the more people that are pushing that awareness of reptiles and the hobby will only help that 8-year-old kid become a customer of somebody in the hobby, and that kid's friend, and that kid's kid's friend, and that kid's kids eventually when that kid's older. So like, if you just stick with it and don't give up, there's a place for everybody in this hobby, whether you're just like a small hobbyist seller that just wants to sell some every now and then, or whether you actually do want to make like a thriving business out of it, you know?
Yeah. And I mean, that's what's so great is like, it's really sad that often people are shamed for making this a business, right? I almost call it like success shaming. But we all love these animals. We wouldn't put so much time, effort, and risk so much of our finances in order to try to progress this career. But there's nothing more like so when I first started, my goddaughter would always be like, oh, can I like help? But she was terrified. She was like 3 years old, terrified of any reptile. But now that she's like 6 years old, she comes in and she's like, oh, I want to hold thick. And then she goes and grabs my super gigantic gecko thick, and she'll put her on her head. And then she'll be like, I want to grab this one. And then she hangs out with all of them. And then like being able to see that complete difference is so satisfying, because, and it's rewarding, because now she is not going to be one of those girls that grows up, and if they see a lizard or a snake, they're not going to be like, oh, a good snake's a dead snake. No, she's going to pick it up and put it in out of harm's way. Or she's just going to raise her future kids and be like, oh, these are actually really cool animals, and like you should respect them and treat them well. They're, you know, they do have, some of them do actually are intelligent, and they can feel fear and things like that. Like you should respect them. They're just like if you saw a dog or a cat. But so many people just have no respect for them because they're not something cute and cuddly that demands your attention.
Right. And we kind of have that stigma with reptiles as sort of cheap throwaway animals, right?
Mhm.
Like a bug is. Like,
Yeah.
when you really, really let's really, really think about this for a second. Does a cockroach have any less of a right to live than a gecko? Does a gecko have any less of a right to live than a dog? Does a dog have any less of a right to live than a human? Like, as humans, we sort of make our own hierarchy
Mhm.
based on our life experiences and whatnot. But when
Yeah.
it comes down to the bare bones minimum of what everything is, just because reptiles are viewed in general as a lesser species
Yeah.
of value than like a dog or a cat or a human, which, I do believe a reptile is less valuable than a human. I do believe
Oh
there is
my
a
God.
hierarchy,
How could
but
you
yeah,
everyone cancel him? I was gonna say, yeah. There's
yeah,
people that would be like, I would save a dog over a human, and I'm like, you're horribly and morally misguided.
yeah.
Because
I mean,
humans,
look at China; they eat dogs, right?
yeah,
Like, there's a different hierarchy all around the world. It's I didn't mean to stir up negative thoughts, but it's just interesting to think about. But yeah, in American society, reptiles are on near the bottom. The
mhm,
only thing lower than reptiles is like fish and bugs, right?
yeah,
So like they're close to the bottom, but we can change that stigma and that desire, and people could really see how loving and desirable reptiles are, like you said. And certain reptiles and a lot of reptiles are capable of like interaction or like some training capabilities and whatnot. And I think education and educating kids at birthday parties and school events helps a lot with that.
yeah. And like I was at Schaumburg recently, and I am working on the video. Everyone, sorry, I'm just taking a while. But I brought my fiance. It was her first reptile show ever, and I was like, wow, I
Wow.
to experience this with her, and it was like one
Yeah.
of the really biggest ones. And like I tried to like get her to hold some lychees and things like that, or just like go and look. I was like, look, this is the because I really want to have a bunch of Galapagos or Aldabra tortoises, but she doesn't know it. But when she sees them, there was a pair of Aldabras at the show, and I was like, look at these, and then she was like, wow, okay, that's incredible. And I was like, yeah, these are freaking dope. Like being able to see and interact and like, it's just seeing someone have that revelation of like, oh, people really value these, or oh, these are actually important animals in the ecosystem, also in the economy, and just in the pet trade. People like
Mhm.
could be best friends with their lizard. Like I was best
For
friends with
sure.
my tortoise. I was best friends with my bearded dragon. Um,
And
and
arguably, they're easier to take care of than a mammal, which needs
not
constant
arguably,
water,
that's
constant food. Yeah,
scientifically
no, they
accurate.
are. Yeah, you
Absolutely.
can go on vacation and be perfectly fine for the most part.
Yeah, like the longest I've ever gone without my animals being cared for, my geckos, because my mammals
Mhm.
need care,
Right.
was like a 4-day, 5-day trip. And I just made sure
Yeah.
to spray heavily and give them a lot of liquidier food so that it didn't dry.
Right.
And I knew that they would be okay. I mean, I was still panicking the whole time, but I knew that they would be okay.
Right.
You can't do that with a dog. Can't do that with goats. Can't do that with squirrels. Can't do that with ferrets. Can't do that with cats. Well, a cat you probably could. Cats aren't
They
domesticated. They
figure
don't
a
care
way
about
to live. Yeah.
cats
They
are not
figure a
domesticated.
They're crazy. But yeah, and just kind of capping off on the subject of reptiles and education and hobbyists, there are different excitements in life that catch your attention as a reptile enthusiast. Let's call it
Mhm.
that. When you're first into reptiles as a kid, you're like, wow, these are like dinosaurs. I love watching my little gecko run around the cage and hunt crickets and stuff. But then there's another level of enthusiasm that exists as well with reptiles, which is on the breeding side. It's so amazing to breed
Yeah.
animals, see them hatch, create combinations, and arguably somebody like me, I don't have a lot of time. I don't watch any of my animals eat anymore. Like
Mhm.
I'm just in the process of taking care of them, but I watch them hatch. I watch their patterns develop. Like I'm in a different
Yeah.
stage of reptile enthusiasm now. However, I am supplying reptiles for people that are in stage 1. So even
Mhm.
though I'm at like stage three helps stage 1. So stage 1 or stage 2, like how there's always haters, you
Yeah.
can't hate on the breeders. You can't hate on stage 3 because without stage 3, there's no supply for stage 1 or stage 2.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. And that's like, and then you're starting that someone's passion, and then
Yeah.
they'll go from, you know, having one pet that they love watching every hour of the day to eventually, you know, maybe making 100 geckos a year that are then going to a bunch of people's families. And then those families, maybe only one of them also becomes, and it's a whole thing. And that's how we all started. There was one thing that I wanted. Just earlier today, I was doing a video and I was filming. I had this pairing that I always wanted to do. I wanted to pair Giga Chad, my nicest Lily White, to Thalia, which is this crazy, contrasty, amazing triple X extreme Harlequin that is Halloween. Like, I'm talking vibrant. It looks fake. Vibrant orange, black base color, huge head. She's 70 grams or something. Massive. And I talked about, like, my third video ever, I think, was talking about that pairing. And I really was excited for that pairing. And then today I was holding that gecko and I was like, oh yeah, that's her baby. That was the idea that I had 6 months ago to pair a Lily White to this extreme triple X Halloween. And now I'm holding the offspring and I see how it's going to develop. And I know that it's going to be exactly what I had in mind. And I was like, wow, there was nothing more satisfying. I had like a total moment right there. I was like, wow, like, there's nothing more satisfying than holding this thing that is only here because of my idea. And I'm holding it. This is like the most magical moment I've ever experienced so far. Having like such a far out idea, like a year of thinking about it. And then I created it. And then I was like, wow. And then it jumped and splat onto the floor. And I was like, yep, okay, that moment's gone.
Shoot, at least Crested Geckos kind of like break the wind on their way down.
And that's the thing. A baby Crested Gecko could jump from the top of my 2-story house and land on the grass just fine. Because small things will reach terminal velocity, and their terminal velocity is not lethal. It's a physics thing. Whenever people ask, like, oh no, is it okay that gecko fell on the floor? I'm like, yeah, it's a physics thing. Because they don't.
There's nothing more exciting for kids than like when I go to birthday parties and stuff and I have a baby Crested Gecko like sitting on my finger, they're absolutely amazed at this little creation of life sitting on your finger. And even I myself, I'm like, that's pretty cool. This little thing just sitting on your finger. So talking about animals and creation a little bit, do you see yourself branching out to other species, or do you have any desire at this moment to be like, yeah, I want to breed tegus or I want to breed snakes one day? Like,
well, I currently am on a very small scale breeding goats. But I think I've kind of figured out that it's not going to be for any sort of monetary benefit. It's anything of monetary deficit to having them. But I just want to be able to drink goat milk, and I don't want to drink pasteurized milk. And also spend like $8 for half a gallon of goat milk. It's like more like 15 actually. It's crazy.
Is it better for you, goat milk?
Goat milk is incredibly, I could talk about this forever. Goat milk is incredibly healthier for you than any other kind of milk, but you have to have a specific breed. The most common breed that is sold like in pet stores, the milk makes it taste almost like a foul sock after playing hockey. But if you have the right breed, then it tastes like a vanilla ice cream. Like it tastes like vanilla ice cream straight out of the teeth. And it's amazing.
The right breed, you mean like species or morph or species. Line?
So there's different subspecies of goat. I guess it's just goat.
Wow.
But Nubian and Nigerian make the best milk. But Saanen make the most milk. So companies get Saanens, but if their milk sits for a while or it becomes pasteurized, it tastes like you're sucking on a dirty sock. And it's not good.
That's funny.
That is funny, and I do plan on that as well. But you know, I've got to make a child first.
So, talking about expansion real quick. Since last month, you bought a building, right, and had to put on your property. Can you tell me? Do you have pictures of the building up on Instagram yet, or not yet? Really?
I posted it on my story, but I haven't posted it yet. I will be making a video of it. Right now, it's completely like the interior is naked. Like I paid. What?
No, I was just going to say, I was going to ask you about that. Like, can you talk about where you got it from, how much it cost, what it takes to set that up if somebody wants to?
So there was a small portable building company near me. It's a shed essentially, but it's a really big, nice shed with a wraparound porch. And I got a 16-foot by 50-foot building essentially that is portable, which was another big sale point, because if I ever want to move, because like I would like to get 100 acres in like Arkansas and just F off from society. and sell geckos, I could just up that whole building and take it with me, which is a huge benefit.
Did you say it's 60 by 50?
Yep, 15 by 15.
Oh,
It's
15.
16 by 50.
Oh, 16.
Yeah.
16 by 15?
By
Or
50.
oh, by 50. Okay. I
So
thought you said 6D by 50. I was like,
No.
holy cow.
No, so it's an 800 square foot facility, and then
Okay, that's really nice. That's a good size, though.
Yes, this right here that I'm working with is about 100 square feet.
Okay.
To give reference, so like,
and that's how much? How
this,
much is the
building?
Or no, how
this
much is the new one? The new one?
The building that I just got was 22,000 before taxes. After
Or
taxes,
I mean square feet. Sorry, before you touch on that.
It was 800 square feet.
Oh, 800, and what you're in now is 100. So
roughly,
it's like
it's probably less. This
times.
is just like one bedroom in my house that I turned.
Yeah,
into
that's
this.
crazy, dude. Dude, yeah, 50 feet. Holy cow, you're gonna be rocking and rolling.
And so I'm gonna turn it into my office for where I do like my editing. It's also going to be a full-time studio for a full-time podcast, for full-time live streaming, for full-time YouTube creation. It's also going to be a full reptile breeding facility, of course. And I'll still have plenty of room in there. It's going to be also my dubia breeding, not dubia, my red runner breeding facility. I can fit everything in that giant building.
Wow.
Yeah. And it cost about $22,000, and then taxes came out to some more. I got a loan in order to get it. And
what about like water or plumbing or electricity? Like, how does that
still
work?
Working on it. You have to pay the city and then an electrician. The electrician sets up everything, and then the city comes and essentially you pay them to flip a switch. You have to pay them like $850 to do that.
Not bad.
It adds up though, because now we're more in the, and then also the insulation that I got cost $5,000 because I got the top of the line best insulation money can buy, so that if let's say that my window unit that I also just got like a $1,500 window unit, if my window unit ever goes out and I'm on a work trip, right, filming a documentary or something, and I don't get back for a few days, the insulation is so good, even if it's 105 out, it will maintain that 75 degrees for a couple of days how good that insulation is.
That is
that
really
was
good.
like the main. I had to have
what kind of insulation is that? It's
called, it's spray foam, but it's closed cell spray insulation. It's a very specific wording for it. Most people are like, oh, it's not totally worth it unless you're like really trying to be temperature controlled. The other thing is that it makes it so that your walls are waterproof. So if you have a really high humidity, you need to get closed cell. If you're trying to do that method where you keep your room humid and then you just feed and give them water, then you need to do that method. If you're going to be building a building.
Well, you definitely want temperature control. So do you have an AC unit in there or?
So I got like a $1,500 window unit.
A window unit. Yeah. Okay. That'll work.
Yeah. Cause like to set up real AC in there, I have no idea how much that would cost to have like full, like actual ducts and everything. That'd be crazy.
Yeah. The window unit's cool. And the another good thing about that is if breaks or something, you can easily replace it. Right.
Yes.
And I'm sure you're on top of this, but for anybody listening, or if you're not on top of this, you can buy like a little $10 or $15 like Bluetooth Wi-Fi temperature gauge. So like if a fire happens in there or if the temperature is going all wacky, it'll notify your phone so that you can get somebody over there immediately, or you yourself can get over there immediately because you can see that there's a temperature spike for some reason or something, you know, or you could get a camera and look at it. But so let me see here. I asked about the new building, the 22,000, not bad.
Yeah, for 800 square feet. So
800 square feet, that is not bad. Can you talk a little bit about your what are your breeding projects, and what's your favorite project if you had to pick one?
So, I mean, I'm working with primarily, really nice extreme harlequins. I've got, I guess I could pull them out, but then I wouldn't really be able to focus them. I'd have to.
It's up to you. If you want, you can.
I've got my Chad line, which is just this really nice drippy extreme harlequin project that I'm working with. So I find a bunch of females that were complementary to him. I paired them together. And I named them all after like humans because I think it's funny. So I'll be like, oh yeah, Vanessa this. And then my fiance would be like, what? And I'll be like, it's a gecko. But Vanessa is Chad's daughter. which outperforms him, which is incredible. I never thought that would happen. So I have that line, which is just really nice cream, yellow, black base, lots of pattern. And I paired him with Chadet. I made some of the best. I just filmed them all today, so that's going to be a YouTube video soon. There's some incredible. A lot of the babies don't even have base color. It just blew my expectations out of the water. I don't know. There's so many things. I have so many things going on. And without,
so I know you do Lilly. So you do. So right now you're talking about Harlequin.
I can be more general. So I mean, like, because I've got like sub different genres of extreme Harlequin. Extreme Harlequin is really just lateral markings. So I just want as much of it as possible, whether it's pink, whether it's red, whether it's yellow, orange. I want all of it, and I want all the pattern. Because I just think that's awesome. It's like a challenge.
It looks really great. Yeah.
All of them though, what's great is, let's say, I've got my Chad line, my Giga Chad line, and then the Giga Chad crossed to the Chad line is going to make the Sigma Chad line. And then the Sigma Chad line crossed over to my Cap thing and Fraps, they all are going to start intertwining. And then that's when you can start really making some good stuff. When you've got a project you've been working on for 2 years, and you've got 5 different ones, and they all will eventually complement each other when you bring all of them together. I would love to be able to bring the Sigma Chad line of, my greatest Giga Chad offspring to my greatest Chad offspring and breed those together, and those are unrelated. And then I can get those, and then I can breed them to my greatest Fraps ever made, or breed them to my greatest visual exanthic Lily Whites ever made, and then start really crisscrossing and doing things like that. That's when you start making progress on these. I'm sure that you're aware of that, but especially with this, for some reason my mind just clicks with how to do this. I don't know why. But like the cappuccinos are really exciting because of how beautiful and varied frappuccinos are. Because super caps make a super cap cool. I think in the next few years, super cap's going to be pretty boring. Like, people are going to be like, whatever. I think super cap is only useful because if you breed a super cap to a normal, you get 100% cappuccino.
Right. So, or if you breed it to a Harlequin or a Lily White, then now you're getting all cappuccino quality.
Or you breed to a Lily White, then you get your Fraps and you get your caps and no normals. Or
I love the Fraps.
You have so essentially my goal now is to make a visually exanthic Ciroc, which is a Lily White super cappuccino with visual exanthism, because then you can breed that to one single normal head exanthic, and then now you're going to be making 16 or so different combinations. And now we're getting to the ball python world where you start really stacking.
While you were talking about that super cap a second ago, maybe you know this a little better than me. I thought I saw a post by one of the Korean breeders of like the scales up close of the super cappuccino, and he was saying something about possible shedding issues, or the scales are farther apart or something like that, and he needs to like make sure it doesn't have shedding issues. Do you know what I'm talking about? What post
I just saw that post. So super soft, the Gene super soft scale does create smaller and more distance between the scales, but there aren't any health issues there. I think that he was saying that it would benefit from warm bathing, like lukewarm baths. For
super cappuccinos.
Super cappuccinos would benefit from really heavy warm soakings or really heavy spraying for hydration purposes, because their skin dries out. He said that he's noticing. I feel like he could have noticed this a little sooner, but of course I don't know anything was going on over there. But I've seen tons of people with adult super cappuccinos. Nobody's talked about any sort of issues there. I don't think that it will become a big issue, kind of like silkies with bearded dragons or anything like that. I think that's the right term. I don't think it's going to be that sort of issue. I don't think, from what I've seen, literally the super cappuccino that I have is the most active. It is the healthiest. It is the most inquisitive gecko I have ever held. It is like, what's up? And it looks me in the eyes. No gecko that I own, other than one other one, looks me in the eyes. I'll pick it up and it will go, and it looks me in the eyes. That's not normal. And I was like, wow, that's incredible. Like, I was like, okay, I do not think there's any sort of health defects with this morph, because, something so striking, there must be something.
Yeah.
From what I
and I don't think there is anything at this point. There's nothing to show, but that's kind of what happened in leopard geckos. Is there was this very, very striking brand new genetic mutation that came out, and later on it was determined, after it was already sold for like $10,000, it was determined that it actually produces tumors. It produces a form of skin tumors because of that extra bright coloration was caused by, if you know what a tumor is, it's an extra population
It's
of
cancer. So
it's cancer.
So
Yeah. Well,
it sounds like what was happening was because of the mutation in the certain skin cells or in the chromatophores or whatever caused them to start becoming cancerous and wouldn't stop reproducing.
Correct. So when he was showing those pictures, I was reading his little description to see if he was mentioning some form of possible like melanoma, which would be like black cancer, right? Like we have melanoma as humans because we have black skin cells and whatnot. In leopard geckos, that cancer is called iridiopharoma because it's not melanoma, it's not dark pigment that's causing the cancer, it's actually bright white pigment that's causing the cancer. And so that's why the geckos look so striking and amazing, is because their body has an overproduction of this white pigment, So let me give you a topic and then I'm going to ban this.
Yeah, you're good. Yeah. And that's really the interesting part is like, because we breed for all these pretty things on the outside, but we don't know what's happening on the inside until later, usually. And I think right now, are you frozen? Am I still being heard? I guess it's a good time to get a gecko. I'm the only one here now. Hey everybody, welcome to Robby's Reptiles. Today we're going to be talking about vitiligo, the thing that is in super cappuccinos that makes them have translucent spots. No, we're not, but I guess I can pull out some geckos since I'm the only one here now. Who do you guys want me to pull out? Riley's Reptiles. I remember you. I think you're a long-term follower. Come here, honey.
Sorry, Robbie. Was that me? I think I lost connection, right?
Don't run from me. You'll never win.
I think I lost connection. I don't know if you knew that, but I think...
No, it's all good. I kept everyone...
Awesome.
Giga Chad is he's a bit feisty right now. He's breeding, but here's Moonshine. She's just as good. There we go.
Oh yeah, she's beautiful. I really love the Lilly white. Like,
I think you're frozen again. Where are you trying to go, honey?
Can you hear me? Am I still frozen?
Oh,
Can
you're
you
back.
hear me?
You're
okay,
back.
Cool.
Get back on there.
Yeah, she's awesome. Man, that mic is good at like muffling sound. Like usually you touch a mic and it like makes a really bad sound, but
that's her actual color. She's a bit overexposed when I expose for me. Yeah, no, it's a really good one. That's also what the pop filter does. The sock.
Oh, okay, that helps with that. So what about monochrome? What is monochrome? Is that like something new or?
I don't even know 100% what monochrome is because GeckoGen in California discovered it. And then 2 years ago, I saw Apocalypto and was like, oh my gosh, I have to have it. I don't care how much it costs. I'll figure something out. And this was like one of the first geckos I actually ever got. And so I've had it, I've bred it, and I'm trying to figure it out and map the genetics, I guess, myself. GeckoGen doesn't release a lot of information even to me because he knows that, I'm very public about any information that I find out because I approach things differently than he does. He's much more, he wants to figure out everything so that when he releases it, there's not a single question that anyone might have. I want to try to keep people in the loop, but since it is not my discovery, it's not my morph, not my gene, I don't have the liberty to do that. But with my angel dust project that I just kind of inherited, I guess I don't know, the angel dust project that I'm working with, that is something now that it's like, all right, this is me. I'm going to do this my way. And trying to include every single step of the process to figuring out what it is. And sorry that keeps happening to you.
Yeah, that's okay. I have it up now, so I could just hide the user.
And one thing that people might not understand is that a large majority of So when people see, oh, this might be a new morph, and then people buy into it, or they are like excited about it. There's a lot of hype, which I've started to see, especially in the gecko world right now. Yay, adult sites, someone said.
Yeah. No comment. No comment.
So getting into something like that, like for me, monochrome, you have to weigh the, he even said when I bought it, like, I don't know what this is 100%. I'm pretty sure this is a gene. It is proven out. But there's no telling what it is. And I was like, okay, well, as a breeder that has money and that is wanting to make decisions, to advance my business, I will take the risk of buying this thing. Like in the ball python world, that's so common. Someone will be like, I think this is something new. And then you buy it, or there's a paradox, but you didn't know it was a paradox. You thought it was maybe a new gene. You need to weigh those risk and rewards all the time, because you might end up like with Angel Dust, the whole project where they have the giant white spot on their nose.
Yeah.
What if that's piebald? What if that is something? I don't know. But the fact that there's 3 of them, that's really promising. And the fact that with monochrome, we're able to replicate, that's promising. So it's just trying to figure it out. But I have no liberty to really talk about what it is, because I haven't even been given the information.
The one on the thumbnail that I use, that's yours, right?
That is mine. That's Amon. He's right here.
Yeah. What would be the difference between a monochrome and like a patternless per se or something,
So that's like saying, what's the difference between an exanthic and a patternless? Patternless is so this is Amon.
And they're always gray like that?
So when they fire down, they almost look blue. It's really incredible. And they actually have made quite a few offspring. He's they both have put in some work for me. And I'm growing them all up, and then I am trying to see what happens and possibly test for super forms. But so it's like comparing, and this is something I've had to explain, because I could hold up a monochrome, a exanthic, and I could hold up a charcoal, and I bet if I was a good enough charcoal, a lot of people would say that the rest were just this, and the charcoal was the exanthic. Or I could hold up an exanthic and a monochrome and a charcoal, and people would say that the monochrome is the exanthic, because they could all be patternless, which is just more so the trait, I believe, is they don't have, well, no, technically Phantom is a gene now. I have to keep correcting myself because things are being figured out.
Yeah.
But so this is extreme Harlequin. There can be Harlequin exanthics. There can be Harlequin charcoals, and I'm trying to positively identify Harlequin monochrome, which would be quite difficult to identify. But I'm trying to find out my own things because I haven't been told the tells. So I've kind of just been going off my own discoveries, and I've got about 25 to 40 offspring that I'm trying to work with, more so in the ballpark of like 25, I would say.
How did you convince him to let go of the project,
like
or was he
4.5 months of DMing every single day, being super interested and being like, come on, what would you sell Apocalypto for? Like, come on. And he was like, I'm never going to sell Apocalypto, but I'll sell you his brother. And I was like, okay, yeah, it's good enough. And then I got him on. And it's something, Geckos Anonymous actually is another person who just got monochrome. Him and I made a deal. He supplied me with a few females that were lily white to pair in exchange for him getting some visual monochrome from the offspring. So he now owns one, and he's going to be owning a second one pretty soon from the outcrosses that I've been working on.
Now, I know you said the guy didn't share much about monochrome, but have you seen pictures of all of these babies and the babies that you have from your monochrome?
About it all the time.
Are they all patternless, or like, you know what I mean? Like, like the same as Amon?
Yes, they're all very similar to Amon, with slight differences. And also he has released, when he crossed to a red, it created a silver and red bicolor rather than, just creating a like a pinkish or just a gray or just a red. They mix, but they also don't mix. It's more so they both are representing at the same time, which is super interesting.
Okay.
To both of you, what's the male to female ratio to your projects? I usually have a 1 to 5 ratio. I'd say is a pretty safe ratio.
Yeah, it's pretty safe. I'd like it to be a little bit lower as time goes on, maybe like 1 to 3 or something like that. But for now, 1 to 5 will work.
I've got Amon. I got him, and then when he was 35, he started locking left and right, and then he went up to 40 grams, and then he went up to 50, and now he's at 55 grams, and he's successfully paired to, I'd say, at least 15 females at this point over the course of a year, and he just keeps gaining weight. But then I have some males, I pair them to one, and then they're out of commission this season. Like they're gonna like stop eating. They need to have extra water. It's very male dependent, I would say.
Yeah. Wow. You have a lot of females then that are breeding.
I do. I do not know how many, but all of these are females except for Amon. And then,
are they set up in groups of?
Well, right now all of these are just females. Under this table right now that you're on is my males. I have them separated. Other than Amon, he's with 2 Lily Whites right now.
Do you keep females 2 or 3 in a box? Or
I do not, but I will keep a male with a female or 2 if I know that he can handle it. Amon is the only male that and also my I should show him Clifford, my giant. I also know that he's okay. He can hold his own weight. You know what I mean? Because sometimes the girls will bully. They're pretty big. Usually they're bigger than the males.
Right.
But anyway, there's obvious expression of tiger of some sort. Phantom has to play a role, I'm assuming, being that they usually are patternless with hints of tiger. I don't really know. That's the thing. Because I'm learning about genetics. I've been doing so much research into ball pythons now to even just understand and try to make my own ideas and hypotheses and understandings. But it's pretty uncharted territory. And I signed up for that. It's just that they just look so beautiful. So of course, me posting him, I saw that, whoa, that photo back when I only got 50 likes a photo, I posted a picture of him. Whoa, we got like 1,000 likes. I was like, okay, I'm going to keep posting this guy. So now a lot of people definitely associate me with it, but I didn't make it. And apparently some people thought that I did, and I don't. I just have one male that's a hell of a breeder. I've got 2 more males that I have that are adults from a charcoal outcross because I wanted to see if it was complementary. TLDR, not a very complementary pairing, and it just confuses people. Let me get Clifford, the guy I was just talking about.
All right.
Will your adults take red runners? Yes, they absolutely do. But also, it's just the adults that actually eat bugs. You can't make an adult that doesn't like bugs isn't going to eat bugs.
Do you put your red runners in a bowl or something for them to eat, or you just let them crawl around the cage?
I usually hand feed, surprisingly.
Oh, okay.
But I will just throw them in there, though. I do both. It depends on the day. If I'm I don't have that much to do, I'm going to hand feed. Or some days I'm just going to throw them in there. This is Clifford, my 80-gram male. And he's going to be the founder of my giant line that I'm going to start working on. And I'm not, and that's the thing. Some people, why do you keep doing that? Some people think they're oh, you're just going to try to make obese geckos. Look at this. Does this look obese? This is just a large and in charge male. You can even see that he's got spare skin.
Yeah, he's big.
He's not fat in any way. And he's pushing 80 grams. Cool. So the goal is to just make large bodied geckos, and the goal eventually will be up to 100 grams with better head structure.
Yeah, that'd be sick.
Right?
It's always nice to have different projects, and working towards a bigger animal is always one of the funner projects.
You see him just bite me.
Yeah. That's really cool. Yeah, the monochrome looks really awesome, so I look forward to kind of learning more and seeing how that, takes shape for you.
Yeah. I mean, I am too, trust me.
Yeah, that's why you bred them so much.
I've got a lot of really I think I'm done for outcrosses. Now I'm just trying to raise up and then pair back, test for super forms, or see if it ends up being something that's line bred, or is it something that is a gene, or is it a trait? I'm just going to try to figure it out on my own because I don't know when he's releasing all of his official information. But I know that he's been writing his research paper for a couple of years now.
Well, that's nice that you were able to get your hands on something that's, kind of a little bit more rare and stuff.
Yeah.
So did you tell me, I don't know how much you can or talk about this, but did you tell me that you got some new imports recently, animals or anything?
I don't believe the Koreans. I got the cappuccinos.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Never mind. I thought, yeah, maybe there was something else, some other crested gecko or something besides that you got recently. I just wasn't sure, so I was like, I'll ask him to see.
No, I don't think so.
What? So since you were just talking about the red runners a second ago, how is your experience going with the red runners now that it's been a couple months at least, right? That you've been feeding them all to the crested geckos. Like, you still like it really well? You still like think really highly of it?
Well, I purchased the domain for redrunners.com. And it is, I think that it's going to be like the future of feeders in this hobby, because I'm trying to figure out how I can possibly scan for testing to see if their exoskeletons like reflect a certain type of light frequency or something. Because anytime I expose a red runner to a crested gecko, the feeding response is unmatched compared to anything I've ever fed. I'd say only tied with hornworms. They all love them. Even the babies that don't even know what a bug is, they see it and they're like, yeah, I want to eat that.
You tongue feed the babies or drop them in there? Or?
All the above. I tongue feed and I just drop in for all of my ages.
Okay.
And they all eat the crap out of it. And then I make sure I feed them organic produce. And it's funny, there was some people that were laughing at the fact that I claimed that they're all organic. That's very important when it comes to micronutrients. You know, they're putting pesticides and things on produce specifically to kill bugs, and then you're going to feed it to bugs and then feed that to your animals. Like,
yeah,
seems counterintuitive. And actually, I was watching a mini documentary, and one of the biggest cricket farms actually does make sure that they're all organic and feed organic food too. And I was like, okay, that's a really good, like, that's good that other people are also doing this.
Right.
And then someone, sorry, I'm trying to read these. Yeah, wow, one male paired to 15 in one season. That was over the course of a whole year, not necessarily within a 1 or 2 month breeding season. I would never try to pair to that many all at once. I had him in groups with 2 females for like 2 weeks at a time, and then I would take them out, and then I put 2 more in. And then after that, I'd let him take a break for a few weeks, and then I'd put 1 in, and then he just kept, every single time I introduced one, he was like, you're mine, and no hesitation, was locking left and right. And I was like, and I even contacted a bunch of breeders. I was like, hey, if he's at 10 so far, do I like need to stop? Or like, they were like, has he lost any weight? I'm like, no, he's gained 5 grams. They're like, okay, does he look dehydrated? I'm like, no, he looks really amazing. Here's a video of him. They're like, keep going. He doesn't seem to be having it. Some males just can handle it. Some just really can't. Have you ever looked into gargoyle geckos? No, I think that they're ugly. Not very. I don't want to work with them. Is it worth switching to red runners, or should I stick with dubias? If you're feeding crested geckos, dubias are horrible. They will just crawl into a hole and hide there forever, and they will never move. But red runners move like crickets. Their exoskeletons are weaker, and they are brighter colored, so anything can lock on and see them with ease, compared to a dubia, who's usually brown. Yep.
Yeah, so you've had really good success with the red runners. So if you guys are looking for red runners, they could hit you up. While this thought was on my mind, so when you have all your females back there, do you rotate males through? And since you're not keeping the females in groups, you just leave the male in overnight or something like that? Is that your preference?
Or I'll do what I call a manual pairing, where I'll put them into a really humid tub, and then I'll put it into one of the dark racks, turn the lights off, maybe light a candle, and let them go at it. Breed. So that I call manual pairing, and then putting them and just having them live together, I call passive pairing.
Okay. So the whole setup that you have there, you've done a video on before, but like using those cages and stuff. Like we were talking about earlier, we're always looking to improve and make changes. Are there any changes or tips that you might think about changing about the setup right now that you're like, oh, I could improve this, or I want to change that? Or you like pretty much what's in your videos?
I'm still doing exactly what's in the videos. I stopped, other than I'm no longer putting it into a food ledge. And if you look closely, this has food all over it. And it's because they'll walk up and they'll be like,
yep.
But if I just put it into bottle caps on the floor, they don't do that, and they eat it with a higher rate, because a lot of them couldn't wrap their head around the fact that, they had to climb up to eat food. And a lot of people think that crested geckos need to climb like a 6-foot tall enclosure, and you need to put their food up on ledges because they'll never go to the ground. Every single one of my crested geckos, if I open the enclosure, they are hiding on the ground or sleeping underneath the paper towel. They are not up climbing or anything like that. It's really weird.
Yeah, I've noticed that same thing too.
Mhm.
They like that cover.
Yeah, it's just something that it's funny because a lot of people are starting to get floppy tail syndrome like crazy.
Yeah.
And it's because of these vertical enclosures and not giving them enough horizontal resting area. So then they rest vertically and then their tail flops.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Who are smaller breeders that you recommend? Both you and Robby. You go first.
Oh, I didn't know they were asking me. I thought it was just you. Smaller breeders. Well, I really like Gecko Punk. He was the young gentleman that I was talking to you about earlier in the show, where I watched his YouTube channel, and this kid, I think he's 12 or 13, maybe a little less years old, speaks so eloquently, so professionally, so passionately about his area of reptiles that he's interested in right now, which is the leopard geckos. And I remember him like asking me questions about some of the stuff that he was talking about in the video, and the way that he's able to like learn from these questions and then like teach others and recite it on his channel was really, really impressive to me. And the way that he described his animals, and he's a millennial, he's a young kid, so he's like way more knowledgeable about the video editing and all that than probably like a normal person would have been like 20 years ago coming into this hobby. So I was very impressed with also his editing skills and his camera presence and stuff like that. So I'm really excited to see where he goes. I don't think he's here in the chat anymore, but Gecko Punk is the name of his YouTube channel, and he's a young gentleman that I think will do great in this hobby. So what about you?
I have one personal favorite that I always do business with, and she is named, or her company's name is Lux Exotics. She, no matter the market, always is fair, and she also has some of the most consistent, above average quality. I mean, I got a really nice tiger from her for a really incredible price, especially when people would probably be trying to sell it for $1,000. She isn't someone that's going to try to inflate with the economy. She's going to look at it and charge whatever she thinks she wants to charge, or at least just break even. She's very fair. She's very reasonable. She's very easy to work with. I love doing business with her. And she probably will have like a mini heart attack as I'm talking about her right now. But I couldn't recommend her anymore. I'm working on a YouTube video right now, actually. So I got her permission to mention her about like my top 5 favorite breeders. And it's not going to be anyone that's big, because I've seen other people do videos like that. Although I was going to make a joke, and it was going to be like, well, the first breeder I want to mention is myself. You should only buy from me. And then just oh, there she goes. Yeah, so Lux Exotics would be mine. And then someone is saying,
that's really cool.
If they're hiding under the paper towel, the humidity is too low. That is a good thing to think of, but I know for me, with my measurements, my humidity is just fine. And I do allow for a dry out day, because they do actually need that. So I usually will only feed and spray 3 times a week. I'll do 2 days and then 3 days in between the feeding days.
Yeah, and I know different people have different spraying regimens and whatnot, but it's kind of taboo in the Crested Gecko world sometimes to think that you're not spraying your animal every day, because we're kind of taught, or we have this like idea that they need it, but in reality, it's best to let the cage dry out a little bit. And if you keep the cage soaking wet all the time, it can cause for bacteria, respiratory infections, and
not only that, but you'll have incredible shedding issues if it's never dry.
And you can have actual shedding issues from too much humidity, which is really, really weird. So, you guys don't have to hate Robby for experimenting with this, but I've experimented with so many stuff with the Crested Geckos, because my main thing is leopard geckos, and I feed and clean those guys once a week. And for the last few months, I am not telling you to do this, but what I'm saying is I've only been feeding my Crested Geckos once a week for the last like year or something like that, because there's times in this year where I'm so busy with everything else that's going on, I don't have a chance to feed the Crested Geckos twice a week. And as soon as I realized that that wasn't an issue, I started not caring as much
Yeah.
about being diligent to feed them twice a week. If you feed them twice a week, they will grow faster. They will eat more or whatever, but it's like not absolutely necessary to feed them twice a week. If they eat once a week, I haven't seen any issues with mine. They breed, they lay eggs, all of that just fine. What I do try to do is spray every other day. However, I will leave this caveat. There have been times where maybe I haven't sprayed for like 4 days. Geckos are perfectly fine. So like sometimes we baby them a little bit too much, thinking that like they need water every single day, they need food every single day, when in reality, reptiles are very well designed to thrive. And I'm not saying you should copy my style. I'm just saying that I have a lot of experience these last 2 years with pushing Crested Geckos to the limit of, or what other people would consider the limit of what shouldn't be done. And they've been perfectly fine, like no problem whatsoever. And I'm in Arizona where it's super hot, super dry. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, I've never heard of someone having success with that, and but also I was just hearing Altitude talk today about how, and we all know this too, but I don't think we think about it often with crested geckos, is that reptiles have a different metabolism than humans, mammals, anything like that.
right.
Their metabolisms are very slow, and that's purposeful so that they don't have that much maintenance that they need to upkeep. And so, like, yeah, you can safely go with only feeding twice a week. And it sounds like you've been having pretty decent success with just doing once a week, with no fatalities and no abnormalities in health, which is very interesting. And I think then it's just one thing that people in the hobby need to understand is, like, if someone is just doing something and it works for them, and if you don't agree with it, that is fine. You can just say, I'm not going to do that, and leave it at that. I know for
Right.
me, I'm testing and debating doing twice a week. I don't know if I could ever personally do once a week, just because
You're
of
3 times a week right now, right?
right now I'm 3 times a week, and I'm thinking of lowering it to 2. But then I would have to have a day where I come in and just spray instead of feeding.
Right.
For me, I've always done them at the same time. I'm like, if I'm doing one, I might as well do all of them. That's just me.
Yeah, and that's why I said nobody hate on Robby for this, because this is what I'm doing. And I'll be the first to admit that the only reason I'm not feeding my crested geckos twice a week, or I'm not diligent to make sure I spray every other day, and sometimes I go 3 or 4 days without spray. The only reason I'm not diligent to do that is because I'm so busy with a lot of other stuff that are kind of like, I love my crested geckos, but they're not my number one, right? So like my number one, my time has to be spent with my number one. And so kind of because they're my number two, I'm looking for how much can I get away with? And so I've been experimenting with that over these last 2 years, and I haven't had any issues, but that does not mean you should copy what I'm doing. And I'm very observant to if the gecko's losing weight, if the gecko's laying infertile eggs. I am not keeping males and females together in these conditions unless I'm pairing them, because the stress of being together could make them more dehydrated,
Yeah,
could make
absolutely.
them more hungry, and all of that. So let's just consider that these geckos are all kept individually. And although I do throw a male with a female for like 4 or 5 days, and I keep them in this same condition where I might feed them only once a week or whatever, or once every 5-6 days in that condition, even if they're breeding, you might be super unlucky and you might kill your geckos. You might dehydrate your geckos. You might put your geckos in a position that you can't recover them out of, or it's going to be difficult. So for whatever reason, I've found it okay, and the only reason I'm pushing those boundaries is because it's worth the risk for me, because they're not like my number one, so to speak. And I just have to make the decision of where to delegate my time.
Yeah, and I think that you're still taking, I'm assuming, the measurements of observing, saying, okay, how are they
Yeah.
handling this? Blah,
Yeah,
blah,
I
blah.
observe them completely. Yeah.
It's
I
not
would
like
not
you.
purposely torture them. If they were having issues, I would absolutely make it a priority to make sure I fed them twice a week. But the only reason I'm comfortable with feeding them And when I say once a week, it's more like 5 to 6 days, maybe 7 days, but it's more of like 5 to 6 days. I'm feeding them on a 5 to 6
Yeah,
day
once every
basis.
5 days or
Yeah,
something.
once every 5 to 6 days. And I have not noticed any issues, but I am very observant, like you said. And if I had noticed any issues, I absolutely would have changed things to address it more, because you don't want your animals suffering. You don't want your animals dying, you know, and all that kind of stuff. And so yeah, but preferably if I had my way, I would probably feed them at least twice a week, maybe 3 times a week, if time was not an issue. I'll put it that way, you know.
Yeah, for me, I mean, so you're still spraying them multiple times a week.
I still spray them at least every other day usually.
Mhm.
Usually. Yeah.
Yeah, because often I've noticed I just do 3 because that's what I'm comfortable with. I know that a lot of big breeders get away with 2, and they have great success with that. So I'm looking into doing that as well.
2 sprays a week, you mean? Or
Well, they have the room humidified, and then they're
okay,
feeding
sure.
twice a week. So I would have to spray 3 times a week, but only feed twice a week is what I would do, because I don't want to do the whole humidity thing and then give them a water dish, because they'll just come over and knock it over, and then they don't have water, everything like that. I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah. And the water spills into their poo, and it creates a lot of smell and bacteria.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, it's just 3 days a week. But I do notice they waste a lot of the food. But luckily, I feed all that food to the red runners, and then they eat the red runners. So for
Yeah,
me,
that's really cool. You found the red runner thing.
I really like doing 3 days a week, and I spray 3 times a week. The babies grow really quickly, and that's the thing, is a lot of people are shocked at how quickly my geckos grow. Like I recently got in a female that was at like 29 grams, and now within 4 months she's 55 grams. From just feeding whatever her body wants, I give it to her.
Do you supplement your red runners with calcium powder or like vitamins? You know, before you
I don't
like dust them?
my red runners. Actually, I make sure that I feed them
Yeah.
the most high. I feed them the right foods to give to the geckos, but I also will supplement the Pangea diet that I feed, or the Rapashi diet that I feed. So like I put extra liquid calcium into the diet. I put raw organic honey into their diet. I put organic grass-fed whey into their diet as well, so that they get more protein, and it's better absorbability, being from goat whey rather than cow whey. And I am trying to look into starting my own gecko food, actually, but that's a whole different thing for another day. Just because I read, I'm very health conscious, and I read all the ingredients that are in these foods, and it's like, man, I feel like in the wild they would just like lick some fruit and then eat a bug.
Right.
Why is there a laundry list this long on the packaging of all these chemicals that are going into the food? I know that a lot of them are vitamins and things to be optimal, but I mean, I think that it will be okay. And I think that if I do go forward with the food thing, it's not going to be something to replace what we use. I think it would be something that you feed once a week or twice a week, instead of 4 times a week, always giving them, the breeder formula, things like that. I think that there is a hole in the market to have a organic, all very simple, like a 5 ingredient gecko food, where it's like fruit powder, all organic, with grass-fed whey and organic bee pollen and kelp or something like that. That would be in my opinion, and I still need to get it and then see how my geckos react to it, and then have a group that I try to raise off only that food and everything like that. It's going to be like 5 years of testing and research to actually go to the public, because I know that there's another company, Lugardi, I believe, kind of just put stuff together allegedly and then just released it with no field testing, and that's why so many people are like, hey, my gecko's not eating it, blah blah blah. I have a running joke that the best purpose for Lugardi gecko diet is to feed it to your roaches.
Well, that's cool. You're kind of figuring out some new supplemental ways to beef up your geckos, make them healthier, give them some more diversity.
Yeah, and they love it. Like, especially blending in bugs to the food. A lot of people were really off put when I first ever announced that. And guess what?
Yeah.
Seeing a lot of people on their Instagrams. It's funny. A lot of people will be like testing out this tip I heard from a breeder. and it's raw organic honey, or it's blending bugs into the food. It's all the tips that I've put onto YouTube, but no one's saying them. No one's saying it's from me because they don't want to be like, oh yeah, I got it from Robby. But I don't care. I want to help the community, because if we're all growing geckos faster and we're making healthier, bigger, fatter geckos, and we're making more valuable geckos, then we're going to make prettier geckos. And I just want to keep making the prettiest and the prettiest. But the problem is, I can't find anyone that's making really pretty geckos right now. Or if I do, they're for exorbitant amounts of money. And it's not worth it right now. So that's why I'm just like, right now, it's like I'm diamond hands right now. All the geckos I have, I'm not selling anything for less than I want to, or I'm going to hold on to it for another few years until they will sell for what I want them to.
So let me ask this real quick then. Instead of tongue feeding the red runners and stuff, do you think it's just as beneficial and possibly easier to grind the red runners up into their weekly food or whatever, the paste, so that you don't have to spend the time tongue feeding? Or does it do two separate things, you think?
Well, when it comes to, really, there's not a lot of time wasted with tongue feeding. And the reason why is because I will play favorites. You know, like I have my cappuccinos or my angel dust project. I want them to put on weight quicker. I want them to grow up faster. Because I've had some where I've had some geckos where they were a year and a half old and just hit 10 grams. And then I have another gecko that hit 65 grams at a year and a half. One was eating bugs every single day, and I could hand feed them. And this was me personally, just like, I want to see what happens if this one's only off Pangea, and I'm going to feed this one bugs as often as she'll take them. And what do you know? Huge disparity. But
the bugs really help them grow.
Absolutely. But also, when you feed, when you blend it into the food and then feed them, sometimes, you know, my food goes completely to waste and they won't even lick up the food. The babies sometimes won't even eat any of it. But if I drop a bug in, they'll hunt it. So that's why. And like, I can look and I can be like, oh yeah, SS3 -7, that one really likes bugs. I'll throw some bugs in there. I know that Lux Chad 7, they really like it. I know that Nikki Giga 3-4, they both really like, you know, like I just look and I know my collection. So I won't just give bugs to all of them.
Gotcha.
I initially will, and then I'll know, okay, they eat bugs, or I might label it, and then I'll try to keep weaning them onto bugs, because if they eat bugs, it's more efficient than blending all of it into the food and then dispersing it among the entire colony. Because and so what I was saying about tongue feeding is, if you just feed a baby one bug tongue fed, it's going to grow way faster. That's so much nutrients from just eating one bug compared to trying to blend up the same amount of food.
No, for anyone listening out there, the people who have experimented with bugs, even Wally from Supreme Gecko has noticed the same thing as me. Now, I do mealworms because I feed my leopard geckos mealworms. But when I fed my baby crested geckos mealworms, oh my gosh, they grew so fast. You know, and so I could imagine, like you're talking about with the bugs, if you're feeding your geckos bugs, they're going to grow quick, and that's good for their body. It's better for you as a breeder. So if you have the time to do that, I would definitely encourage people to find some kind of bug. And Robby's had a lot of success with the red runners. Not everyone has. There's this weird stigma in the hobby that like mealworms are going to eat through your crested gecko's stomach. But Wally from Supreme Gecko has always fed mealworms to his crested geckos. And I was experimenting with mealworms since I have a bunch on hand from the leopard geckos. And both of us have never seen that issue. But you know how people talk and get that stigma in their mind. Now, you have your reasons for not wanting to do the mealworms, and you found a great home with the red runners, and I think that's excellent. So for anybody out there who maybe is like hesitant on the mealworms or whatever, the red runners have been proven with Robby to do really, really good. And they have that soft exoskeleton shell, right?
Very soft. That's the important part. I need to go.
And maybe that's where the fear came from, because Robby, I don't know if you remember this, but bearded dragons cannot digest mealworms. They will poop out the mealworms whole. And so maybe people kind of got it in their mind that like not every reptile can digest mealworms and crested geckos can't digest mealworms. You know, maybe that kind of got attached stigmatism there. And I won't hold you up for too much longer, Robby. We've probably got a couple more things we'll talk about, and then I'll let you go for the night if that's cool. I know your camera's failing there, so we'll see it. We'll see, Anonymous. We'll see if Robby wants to touch on that real quick. And then I got a couple wrap-up questions for him.
1 second. I'm gonna switch to my laptop's camera because I can't find any more batteries for my camera.
Oh no, that's okay.
How do I do that though?
So on screen there might be like a little camera video button or something.
Camera, and there we go. Integrated webcam.
You're
Prepare
so
for the
smart,
quality
Robby.
to drop drastically. Okay, I'm back.
So I was saying I won't keep you too much longer. I'm very thankful for your time. I know 2 hours out
Yeah,
of your
absolutely.
day is a lot of time, and it's really cool to be able to talk reptiles. I don't know if you mind touching on this topic with me, but Anonymous was asking about, and I don't know any of the
No, you're good.
controversial
I
things
really
that
wanted to
maybe
talk
you
about
had.
it too. But before that,
Um,
someone asked, do I have a shingle back? I'm working on it. I am on a payment plan for getting a shingle back. Yes.
Nice. That would be
Very
cool.
excited. So that
We'll
is one
talk about
species.
that more when
Yeah.
you do, because that would be
Once I
sick.
have him, oh, he's never leaving my shoulder. Right here. This is the mascot of
I
Robby
don't know
Reptiles.
much about shinglebacks. Are they like difficult to get, or what's the deal? But I hear people talking
Crazy
about
difficult. They're
more.
CITES 3. It's illegal for them to cross any national border now without the government of Australia knowing. You also have
Holy
to have
cow.
legal permits for having them, and they have to be registered with the Australian government for them to be legally owned. They're incredibly rare. They're incredibly expensive, upwards of 10,000 minimum. They are the rarest species in North America, and they go for $50 in Australia. You find them on
Yeah,
the
isn't
street.
that crazy?
Yep.
Yeah. Or some
But
of the skinks that they have that actually have mutations we can't get in America, but over there it's running rampant. Certainly like Bell's phase monitor lizards running rampant over here. They're like
yep.
$10,000. So before we touch on that, you want to explain what Sable is real quick for
Sable is something that someone was like, hey, this might be a gene. It looks different. So a few people bought into it, including Morph Menagerie is one of the Americans that has it. I think she's one of the only Americans that has it. And it is now proved out to be a codominant with a super form being a pure black and white version of it. And they still need to grow it up. So I guess technically it's not proven yet, but it's showing promising things. So you can expect for people, and people don't even know about Chocho.
Yeah. What do you know about Chocho? I don't know anything about Chocho.
I just see them and I'm like, okay, I want them, and they're like never selling. And I was like,
It sounds like a chocolate gecko. What does the morph actually do, or what does it look like?
It does make it look delicious. I will tell you that. It looks very edible. But it's a very beautiful brown, orange brown. It looks delicious. Like literally, I don't know how to describe it. It looks very interesting. But yeah, Sable is now some sort of gene, I believe. And I mean, for me, I'm very like anytime I see something that's a possibility, I'll hop onto it because you never know when that's gonna pan out. And I was working. I have a deal set actually to get 2 Sables next year. But from my knowledge, they're going before they were officially a gene. They were going for 12,000 hatchling. So
before they were a gene,
before
right?
they were officially. So it's funny when people were in uproar because I sold a monochrome for $22.50 2 years ago, a baby that I had made, and people are selling $15,000 Sables, and caps originally were 10,000 a piece, everything like that.
2250, like 22,050?
No, $2,250.
2,250.
Yeah, and
both
I love
still
that,
impressive numbers.
Yeah, and I was kind of like talking to the people that were interested. I wanted to make sure it went to the right place, explained like, hey, this is something we don't know what it is, but we're working on it. It seems to be proving. Here's this. And a small business owner got it, and I'm really good friends with him now. He sends me update pictures. It is a beautiful male that he got too. And it looks just like the dad. So very good purchase on his end. But wouldn't it be cheaper to fly to Australia? We're going to answer that big question, Anonymous. But wouldn't it be cheaper? This is a quick one. Wouldn't it be cheaper to fly to Australia and get a shingleback and come back? No, because in Australia, that is it's life in prison, minimum 50 years with a like $50,000, $100,000 fine, or life in prison. And they catch people doing it all the time because the Asian market, actually, Korea, China, Japan, Taiwan, they will pay oodles of money for a shingleback, because apparently this is from only sources that I've heard that are just sources that I've heard this information from. This is not my own information. That apparently in Asian cultures it is, and like in the reptile world especially, but not even that, it's the equivalent of owning like a Bugatti if you have one of these. This rare species, this pine cone looking skink. Did I lose you? I think I lost you. Can everyone still hear me? Okay, I think I'm still alive. But apparently in Asian cultures, these shinglebacks are very sought after. So that's why there is a big problem in Australia with people illegally exporting them for tons of money, and then they end up spending life in prison. So it is a crazy market. It's a crazy world. A lot of the people that even work with shinglebacks are incredibly secretive, which I am having to struggle with discovering. And I'm going to be pretty much the only open person about it, and it might end up backfiring, but I just want to make general, YouTube videos about their care and things like that, because there's no YouTube videos about that at all. Let's wait for him to get back on, and then we will get to your question, Anonymous. Okay, I'm glad that you guys can still hear me. That's good. This is Thick, by the way. She is my fat bottom girl, my main squeeze. She is an 80-gram female. I'm sorry, there's a pimple on my nose. She is an 83-gram female, although I just weighed her the other day. She's like 75 now because she laid eggs. She's got a beautiful body, very voluptuous and squishy, but she's also very healthy, and she's also very chill. Look at her. She just likes to hang out with me. She's very calm. Have you ever had to cull a gecko? I have had a gecko that was... Hey, he's back.
Yeah.
I have had a gecko hatch that was a conjoined twin, but it was dead.
Wow.
I haven't had to cull any per se. If there's ones that I know, like these are beyond saving and like they're about to like die, either from random failure to thrive, or maybe they swallowed the hatch right for some reason, and I know that they're beyond the point of saving, then I have my snapping turtle, which is my trash can. Because I am a big believer in never letting any biomaterial go to waste, because that is, this is just a saying. I don't know what anyone's beliefs are, but like that's what God intended. That's what nature intended, for everything to go to purpose. Everything has to be used. So that's why I love feeding my leftover gecko food to my red runners, and then I feed the red runners to the geckos, or like I feed my scraps to my black soldier larvae farm that I have. And then I feed the larvae to the chickens, and then I eat the chicken eggs, and then I feed the chicken egg scraps to the larvae. It's a system.
So what you're saying is you eat gecko food.
Yeah, because I do feed the red runners to the chickens, and then anyway.
But yeah, no, it's a circle of life thing. Did you want to move on to that last topic before I ask you a couple?
That last topic.
So if you don't mind, I'll go first so that you can kind of say whatever you want to say comfort level wise, because I think my perspective is changing possibly a little bit. When I first, let me review the question real quick. Is Anonymous says, how do you feel about backlash from other breeders? You both have been in controversial settings. Aren't you afraid it will affect your standings in the business long term? When I first came into the hobby and I was kind of just doing my own thing, and then I started getting backlash for doing my own thing, and people weren't agreeing with certain decisions I was making or certain things that I was teaching, like just because I was a younger breeder, newer to the scene, and I was making videos and talking about leper geckos per se, and then also working with some controversial morphs. All of that created a lot of drama and a lot of trouble for me. And I'll be 100% honest with you, Robby. I love reptiles so much. The drama saddens me a little bit, because some of the people that I'm involved with the drama in, I honestly think that they're great breeders. They're great people. I want to talk to them about reptiles, but there's this wall there. There's this wall that we can't get past. And I don't want to put the blame on them, because their opinions about their disagreements about me are very, very strong. So I don't want to say it's their fault, but I've tried to mend bridges. I've tried to reach out. I've tried all of that to no avail. Like, they just don't want anything to do with me. And not only does that hurt you on a personal level sometimes, but it also hurts the little kid inside of you that kind of like looked up to these people, or kind of admires certain things that they're doing, or wants, I'll admit it, I want to be a part of their group because they're doing great things in the hobby. And the fact that like they won't let me, so to speak, that not only hurts you as a person, but it does hurt you as a business a little bit because they have so much influence and what they say matters to other people in the hobby. That being said, I do like that I have the ability to say what I want, do what I want, and all of that kind of stuff because I am building my own following, so to speak, and developing my own following. And I'm not reliant upon their opinions of me to make sales or to be successful. Yes, I'm going to lose sales and I'm going to lose followers because of what has happened between me and these people and because they have such a huge influence over other people in the hobby. But at the end of the day, you know, when I made that decision a long time ago to be okay with that, I made the decision to say, I'm going to be successful no matter what. Whether these people support me, I'm going to keep going. Whether they reject me, I'm going to keep going no matter what. But a little part of me wishes it was different. Wishes maybe I was a little bit more humble. Maybe I did hold my tongue back a little bit more. Maybe I didn't stir the pot so much because I want to be in with these guys. I want to talk geckos with them. I want for them to recommend me as a channel to watch and a gecko breeder to look up to, but none of that is happening right now because of the beef that has been stirred up between us, you know? So I got to take a leak real quick, but you could talk on that topic and touch base on whatever you want, and I'll be right back. I can hear you, but I'll mute myself.
Okay. You know, the first thing to really consider is the source, not necessarily like CNN and all that stuff. You know what I mean? Who are the ones that are under the spotlight? Because people like me and him, we are putting ourselves out there for the entire world to see, to almost no benefit to us, to try and give information to the world, to try to post videos on YouTube. We're the ones that are trying to make a difference in the hobby. What are these other people doing to help their customers or to help their friends or to help the hobby as a whole? What are they really doing? You know, you don't see a lot of them making informative YouTube videos or making reels trying to give information. You don't see a lot of them willingly giving a lot of advice to their customers or to their friends or to their competition. That's the first thing is like, of course, the people from the outside will see that there's so much happening around both me and him, but we're also the only ones that are on YouTube really expressing our opinions and really trying to push the hobby forward and trying to push the envelope. But with my case specifically, I know a lot. It's funny because I know that I have the silent majority are on my side for anything that's happened, because everyone, especially this time around, everyone is seeing the hypocrisy. Everyone is seeing the self-righteousness. And it's a problem that can kind of just be summed up by like, think of the type of people that go on Facebook and they're like, that's it. Just think of the type of people that go on Facebook. Those are the type of people that are having issues with anything that I've been doing. And I mean, also you need to consider that it's the internet. People say things. And you also need to consider that it's our competition that might be saying anything against us. But in the long run, the reason why I'm staying true, because one, I have never been fake on camera. I have never been fake in person. I am myself. And I loved meeting a lot of you guys at the Schaumburg show. That was awesome. And I had like one person that was like, oh my gosh, Robby, hey. And I was like, do not act so excited to see me. Like, like I'm a normal person. You are still muted, by the way. But it was just kind of a shock to me. But it's a shame to see that there's so many people like this in the community that are immediately trying to put others down or immediately trying to defame others when we all should be trying to build each other up. Like I see someone post something on Facebook or on Instagram and they're like, oh, this gecko has a weird spot. Is it possibly a new thing? And rather than, and I try to do this, rather than encouraging them like, hey, That might be something. I would
Maybe.
love to see you, start a project with that. Try to see if it's recessive, see if it's co-dominant. I would love to see your progress with that trait, or that trait for now. But what these other people do is they go and they make a meme about it, making you look stupid. Or they go and they comment on their echo chamber saying, look how stupid this person is. This person's dumb. One's coming from a place of genuine love for the hobby and actually trying to better things. And one is just coming from a place of an inferiority or superiority complex. And it's really sad that there's so many people that have that issue. Yeah, that's pretty much all that I can say. I know, sorry, the second part of the question, it will not affect my business in any way, because I know that I have the silent majority, because everyone has reached out showing their condolences and support for me, apologizing for how I am being attacked for something that 90% of the community does. They're just moving the goalposts in order to make me a target. And I'll fill you in on everything about this later.
Yeah, because I don't know the specifics. I don't,
I know. It's essentially
but
what all of the research shows for when a gecko is RTB. Well, now the hobby is, these group of people are moving the goalpost really quick out from the hobby to try and make people look bad and stupid. They're like, and so now there's people that were saying, right, in RTB, Crested Gecko, from my knowledge and from everything that I had read getting into this years ago, all my sources said that around 30 to 35 grams, they're able to breed. You would like to get them heavier because it's safer. Cool. Well, what happens if this isn't a good example, but what happens if your, let's say, 30-gram Crested Gecko starts laying eggs? What do?
pair them.
And so I say pair them, because I got advice from a breeder when I first started that if you pair them, their hormones will tell them to eat, pack on weight. And what do you know? I had a gecko that was 32 grams. Now she's 70 grams. And and that was within a 5-month time span. She literally doubled her weight after doing that. And so they're trying to sit on their self-righteousness and say, I would never do that because I don't care about the money, and you should let them do this, and you should let them do this, and blah, 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 blah. I don't even pair my geckos until they're 3 years old and 55 grams. And it's like,
yeah,
we're moving everything now. And as long as no one is hurting their geckos, and as long as they are thriving, we should all just let each other have our own strategies. You are saying that you're finding success in one method. I'm finding success in another method. All of our geckos look very healthy. That's all that should matter. I need to tell them to turn down that movie. I hope you guys can't hear it.
Oh no, it's not too bad. Yeah, I was gonna. No, go ahead. Finish your thought.
But anyway, it's not going to affect my business in any way, because a large majority of breeders already, I know, back me up. I just literally cannot mention them, because this group of people will go and attack them for supporting me. And that's the same thing that happened with me when I was supporting someone else that was being attacked by someone from that group or like that group. I got my account deleted and almost lost my livelihood. So you're seeing kind of the pattern that we have going on here. So silently, I know that I have a lot of people that are on my side and also disagree with their methods and everything like that. Gecko Punk, see you later. Glad that you could tune in.
He's here. That was the kid I was talking about.
Yeah.
He was here for, well, I don't know if he was here the whole time, but that was like 3 hours or 2.5 hours, because he was here since the beginning.
In 5 years, a lot of those people are probably going to leave the hobby, because a lot of people, I think, just need to have a purpose, and their purpose is yelling at people on Facebook. But not only that, who's going to be the one that is still uploading YouTube videos trying to better the hobby in the next 5 years? Who is still going to be expanding their facilities in order to keep accommodating more employees, better care, or trying to advance strategies for caring for these animals in order to better efficiently and more healthily take care of all these animals and take on more projects and be able to keep advancing? And you know what I mean? Who's going to still be here? It's going to be people like me. It's going to be people like him. It's going to be people that are truly dedicated to these animals. And people like that like to scream in their echo chambers and make a big deal out of anything because they lost their moment in the spotlight. So they're going to try to start any drama to get back into it. Almost like they're kind of riding off our coattails as we leave them in the dust, is just how business works. So it seems all big and scary right now to some people. but we know that we are being ourselves, and it will only take time before people see other people's real colors, their true
That's
colors.
true. That is true.
It's as simple as that.
And I appreciate you talking about the topic because it is sensitive, you know, and I'm kind of at the point now where like I'm trying with every fiber in my being to not say things that are like inflammatory back towards them, because just so you know, like I was never really aggressive or defaming towards these people that were like defaming or aggressive to me. I was never outwardly like cursing them out or
Likewise.
publicly shaming them. I would even make videos like recommending people to follow them and look at their content. And I was hoping that that would sort of allow us to mend the bridges. But there was I would make little comments and say things that could be taken inflammatory by them and be like, oh, some breeders view things in this way. And then they would hear me say that. And then they would view that as an attack. And because they view that as an attack, now they're attacking back. And it just creates this big cycle of attacks. And so I'm trying really hard in my being to like not comment or not say things in a way that is inflammatory, because like I'm like so tired of it. Like I'm just exhausted of trying to like fight against it. And preferably I would rather be like, I think this ship has sailed, at least for now, but I would rather be on those guys' side than against them, because the leopard gecko world specifically is a very, very small world. And if you get exiled by certain people in that world, it does affect your image and it does affect things. Now, that being said, I'm not going to stop, and I'm going to keep creating, and I'm going to keep making content and cool animals, and I'm sure that I will be just fine. But I feel left out a little bit, because like some of the people that I feel like I could be getting along with really, really well, had I not like ruffled their feathers or like did things that to provoke them or be inflammatory, I could have had like a much funner experience. And I'll say this, and you don't have to say anything about this, but like you said, it really hurts in the hobby when you have friends. Yeah.
I do have to go. My laptop's about to die. I'm sorry to do
Oh
that,
no,
but
you're perfectly cool. You're perfectly cool. I appreciate your time tonight.
Absolutely.
You spent a bunch of time with us, so thank you so much. Look forward to spending more time with you in the future, and wishing you all the best over there.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you having me. It's been a great time.
It has been, bro. I'll talk to you soon, and we'll catch up some more. So thank you, Robby, and I will see all of you guys in the next video.
See ya.
Peace.
Selling in the billions each year, Rainbow Mealworms is your one-stop shop for all your insect needs. Their quality feeders and A-plus customer service keep me coming back to support the health and growth of all of our animals. Visit them today at rainbowmealworms.com.